Malo elere and talo falava to all our viewers around the world. This is another live digital kava session on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. I'm Mr. Aotearoa, coming live from Aotearoa, Auckland, Manurewa. Beautiful day here on this side of the world. Very honored to have a familiar guest on Maui Tekelangi. Um, and yeah, we're very excited to talk about topics for what happened the last few weeks or so, or this past week. And yeah, that's it for me. Oh, I also want to say that we're also live from Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X, and Patreon. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, shoot it our way, especially our super chats. I know Tua, you will touch on that. We'll always prioritize them as they're paying contributing members to the Polynesian Eyes podcast. Oh, yeah, awesome. UTL,
Yeah.
Toe,
So
Show,
that just
Alo.
popped up. He just became a paying member of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. Malo UTOL.
Yes, official. Malo Shikaumbai. Thank you for joining.
Yes,
Tua.
UTOL. You picked the perfect live digital kava session to become a paying member of the channel. Malo Apito. Just before I hand it back, Masi, just a
Yo,
friendly reminder. One of the benefits of being a paying member, and appreciate UTOL, paying members, your comments get highlighted when we go live, right?
correct.
So you don't have to do a super chat, as we say, a digital kava bag. But if you're a paying member like UTOL, you get preference, and we make the effort to highlight your comments when we go live.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Masi.
Malo Kaumai UTO well. And yeah, like I said, awesome to always have the opportunity to have Maui Tekelangi join us. Maui, how's everything going for you today?
Oh, it's great to be back on the podcast. Been meaning to hop on for a while, and even better, not is it just a podcast, but it's a digital kava session. Those are my favorite,
Mm,
and good to have this digital kava session with everybody.
nice,
Malo,
nice.
appreciate it. Malo, we're always excited to have
Yes.
Maui Tegelangi join us. I think the trick, Mr. Aotearoa, you just have to fly Maui Tegelangi to New Zealand. You got to
Mm,
fly him to New Zealand. Last time we had him, he was in America. So we just have to catch him during his world
yes,
travels because Maui
yes,
is known to travel around the world. So I
yes.
guess we have to catch him in between his world travels.
Yes. Well, he did Maui Tegelang, you did say it's much cooler in Aotearoa than in Tonga at the moment. So I think he's
Oh
enjoying
yeah,
the weather in Aotearoa
absolutely,
at the moment.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited for today, and like it's like the universe was waiting for this to align. We were not anticipating that Maui Tekelangi would join us live when we were putting together some of the concepts for the
Mm,
show. But
mhm.
how appropriate, how appropriate. It's like it was meant to be. And for a lot of our viewers and listeners, you've probably seen the last week and a half we haven't been responding to a lot of comments online back and forth, as we say, this is the side gig. Unfortunately, we still gotta work the day job, we still gotta pay bills, and every once in a while we just we take a break from the social media because it's a little exhausting
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
just to kind of give you an idea, like Mr. Aotearoa, we covered some of the numbers on just one of the Facebook pages for
Hmm.
2025 had 2.4 million views
Correct.
alone.
Congratulations, that's
So,
impressive.
yeah.
Polynesian Ice podcast.
And then
That's
if we
impressive.
add the other social media channels, we're probably anywhere between 3.5 to 4 million views throughout
Yeah.
all the different social media channels. And so you add that, you add the thousands of interactions, actually tens of thousands of interactions, thousands of comments. There's we have wives and children. They don't like it when if all we do is sit around and respond to social media. It's barely enough to get us here. You see how hard it is to get Maui Tegelangi to join us back on the show? Come on,
Mm,
guys. We're like we're barely squeezing through, but really appreciate the support there. And Mr. Aotearoa, can you give some background? The show today is on the story of who.
Correct.
Apparently, kind of give the context. We invited him when we were just what, 4 months old as a
Yes.
program very early. We just wanted to hear him tell his stories because everybody online was saying this is a great guy. You get to hear all the great knowledge that he has and kind of give the context there. And we tried to have him in some of the videos we've responded to Mr. Aotearoa.
Yeah. Well, I'll just share what my experience of what I can first recall of our first interaction with him. I think it was the Ufi video.
Yes.
Dua, from what I
Yeah.
believe. Um, so the story of who reacted to our video about Ufi, and at the moment, I think we're still pretty correct that Ufi is not a crop that is eaten in Ha'amoa often, and he responded with the saying of that there's Ufi New Guinea and Ufi something, but I stand corrected that it's Ufi Vao that's commonly eaten in Ha'amoa, right? It's Ufi Vao. So if you guys know what Ufi Vao is, and I know that Samoans would know, it's hard and you cook it for a long time because it's grown like just any vow that pops up. There's really no caretaking for it. So that's the first interaction with story of who, and he responded. And then after that, we've invited him multiple times. I believe you have reached out to him multiple times, Tua. He agreed in the beginning, and then when it gets closer to actually set a schedule, my man backed out. Maybe he likes just the little TikTok 10-minute snippets response. It's much easier than doing a proper
Yeah.
talanoa, which you would think it's an open invitation. When you have talanoa, that's how our Polynesian ancestors have always done things. It's always with the talanoa. So that hasn't happened, but from my understanding, it seems like he's responded multiple times, even though he's told us he's not gonna respond to any more videos after the Ufi video.
Yeah.
And here we are today. So
Yes. And
yeah,
then
that's just background.
he also criticized Jake Fitzemanu, who
Oh,
actually came on the show. Remember, he came on, and Jake Fitzemanu is from Upolu and Savaii, and so we say gay. We may not agree with everything Jake says or his perspective, but he came on the show and we had a conversation.
and that's the thing. Fichi Semandu came on the field. The story of who is still sitting in the bench trying to cheer and say we should have done it this way and do it that way.
Yeah.
But that's the funny thing. And that's like everybody else who don't want to have skin in the game. They like to do the snippets instead of, having a proper talanoa to talk about. And Fichi Semanu, to my understanding, the Fichi Semanu is strong direct links to the Maria Toa clan and family. So, Fitise Manu is a lot more credible to my beliefs in history than story of who's doing 10 minutes critiquing on short clips. So
Yes.
that's just my sharings there, Tua.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, Maui Tegelangi, because I reached out to Maui Tegelangi, was it a couple days ago, asking
Yeah.
him about a couple questions, and then I didn't know he was going to be in New Zealand and available. So even better, I don't have to do any memorization or notes or anything. We can hear it
Awesome.
straight from Maui Tegelangi, and then so we're going to react to 3 videos of Story of Who. We're going to start with the first one, and this is a discussion on tattoos, right? And this
Mm,
is this is one of the things that we encourage. This is why we follow the kava session model, because it's about sharing ideas and having discussions. It's not just ideas that everyone always agrees on that you talk about. It's going to be the battle of ideas. Like we said, you bring your idea, probably has a really good roundhouse kick, and you
mm,
knocked out every other idea out there. But when you come to another one, maybe another one has a really good block and the uppercut, and your
mm.
roundhouse kick gets exposed, and that's not a bad thing. That means you just go back to the drawing board and see if your ideas are still correct, or even better, if it's a bad idea, kill it,
Correct.
kill
Kill
it.
it.
You
Can't
know,
stand on its
but,
own.
yeah. And what are your thoughts on that approach, Mau Tegelangi? While I set up our first video, talking
Yeah,
about discussions.
that's what Kava session is all about. It's about sharing thoughts and ideas, and that's how the ancestors hashed out problems. And not only that,
Mm,
even discussed science, politics, everything. They
mm,
discussed it over the kava bowl, and the whole idea of having a kava session is to hash out things that might not be clear, and don't worry about what's right or wrong right away. But
mm,
time will tell which is right, which is wrong. But I mean, to me, even just for Polynesian cultural sake, you would want to join conversations because everybody knows that all the islands were colonized, and the colonizers for like a generation or two would like disallow even speaking the language,
Hmm.
mm,
disallow passing on knowledge. And so there's a huge gap that exists of knowledge that's been able to filter down to the more modern generations. And a lot of the history that was written down during this gap was from the colonizers' perspective. And so they didn't understand everything that they saw, or
mm,
everything that all the information they came across. And so, hey, I mean, Tonga kind of does have an edge because we were never colonized. And so I would naturally think that it should be uh, easier to swallow for all the neighboring islands to accept that fact that Tonga was never colonized, so that we would naturally have an edge on understanding and determining what was truly our culture and what was not, and to sieve through that foreigner slash colonizer lens that was inherited by a lot of the colonized countries. But I guess maybe not so.
mm,
No, and that's the thing, and that's one of the things that we've kind of shared here. I think because we live in the modern world now, and we have to say Samoa, we have to say Tonga, we have to say Tokelau as it's like these separate entities. I, I really do believe this, that Tonga surviving colonization is a win for everyone, right? Like
mm,
it's almost like viewed sometimes that it's like, oh, the Tongans have their colonization that's separate. No, it's actually a win for the entire Polynesian culture, because I remember one thing you were sharing, um, Maui Tekelangi, was there were certain times throughout the civilization and the empire, the Tuitonga, or the leadership, was fishing for what the best idea or solution was. And I remember you mentioning one time there was like a Kalia building, invitation for the best ideas, and you shared that, Tokelau provided a new technology that dramatically improved the whole civilization as a whole, with providing a new way of building karias with planks from different boats rather than a single hull from a tree. And this is also true, I think, for the ideas, like you were saying, Maui Tegalangi. Our ancestors were doing these kava sessions, trading ideas, challenging ideas, and the best ideas rose to the top. And because Tongatapu was the capital, naturally, any good ideas anywhere else would simmer to the top and be presented there. And really, a win of the Polynesian Empire having its capital survive colonization is a win to everyone, and therefore everyone should naturally navigate or gravitate towards that. That's just kind of something that came to mind.
mm.
Anything you want to add there, Mr. Atearoa or Maui Tegalangi, before while I open up our next video, or our first video, actually?
No, I was just thinking that to it's always when you come across uh greater knowledge, or something. I mean, imagine radio waves or the cell phone 100 years ago. It's it seems impossible and it's hard to accept.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so, and understanding different concepts of even culture and how things were, and if you have a limited knowledge, it's going to be difficult to swallow what other people know more of, because they have a greater knowledge of from different angles of history and culture. And so someone who's not as versed is going to find it more difficult to swallow. But anyways, let's uh let's check this out.
Sweet.
Mm.
All right. Let me know if you guys ever want to pause in between the video, and do some commentary.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't have the sound.
Whakau i le pea. Por kakau fo.
Talo Palava, what's up, everybody? Yeah, hello, level for love. Yeah, man, I can't.
Oh, I didn't save the. Let's. I want to find that video. I didn't realize that. So this is story of Bo. He jumps into a response, but I wanted us to watch the video of the guy. He goes online and he asks the question. So I apologize.
Okay. No. Oh, good. Oh, good.
Because I think that's to me. I was very excited to hear that, to see someone jump online
Mm.
and ask that question, right? To be like,
Mm.
hey, did this really happen? Is this the truth? Because that's what we need to have more of. We need to have more of those types of conversations.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that while I just kind of fill in while I try to find this?
No, I mean, I'll just add on with the whole conversation of just, especially with the tattoo. I think it's all part of just understanding each other's perspective and adding their ideas to the table. And if it stands, it makes sense, and it's just expanding on what people's current knowledge of Polynesian history. Because like I said, like I think Maui Tekelangi touched on it. A lot of the Pacific was colonized, and there's huge gaps, and it's just part of the Talanoa. And if people are open-minded to ideas and are humble enough to admit, okay, maybe this is the correct version of it and the correct standing because Tonga was not colonized. This is the actual oral history. And then when you add on to the data points, we've kind of mentioned, you touched on it on one of the videos you just released, Dua, about there was the carbon dating on the Ha'amonga, and then there's another data point of the weathering of the Ha'amonga, which pushed the dates even further, back. So, it's just all gathering all these dates, scientific evidence, oral histories, and then actual interpretation of events play a huge role in you know, uncovering our history. Because I'm a believer, if you understand your Polynesian history, you have a better identity of who you are and why your ancestors did certain thing, and that's a impactful, let me see, impactful moment for a person to do better for the future. So, I mean, that's why we have
Yeah.
this Talanoa on the
Han.
Polynesianized podcast. But that's kind of my thoughts there.
Yes, Malo Vito. Hey, here's another one of our very common opposition, but we accept all
Yeah.
opposition. This is Boomtown Bullet, aka Gout Bullet, Malo Vito Toko Uso. That's
Mm.
Boomtown's nickname, Gout Bullet. But thank you for joining us,
Malo Boomtown
Malo.
Bullet.
And it's a story of Bo.
Okay.
Boomtown Bullet is
This
one of our fans or
this
opposition
this
that
video
tagged
is
us.
about the tattoos, right?
Yeah, this is the video. So this is, I didn't realize that story of who didn't include this guy's full
Mm.
question because he asked the question. So we'll do this. This is the video he was reacting to.
Okay.
Nei, maro TikTok. E la lo fsili o. Lo fsili. E whakau i le pea. Por kakau fo. O ele. Ele e whakau i le pea. E whakau i le kufunga.
Mm.
Nanga. E ye lo wo konga le. Man. Sili apa whapalangi. I should.
Now that before he goes into English, Masi, anything there That he just quick translation, or we just go into the English part. Did anything stick out to you?
Yeah, for my understanding, he's starting off that he wants to talk about, he wants to share his thoughts on tattooing, and then he said, "No, here's the correct version. I want to share on the people the tattooists." That's what he says
Mm,
when he goes from pea or tatao, saying the
To the
tufunga and
tufunga. Yeah.
iyo, and I think that's more correct, right? It's not the actual tattoo, but it's the tattooists of, they're the ones who are doing the
work.
the tattoo, the work. So that's what
Okay.
he's pretty
Okay.
much saying.
Okay.
Explain this in English because I want to hear the Tongan side and I want to hear the Samoan side. So I have a Tongan friend, and his story on how the tufungas, for those who don't know what a tufunga is, it's the person that does the Samoan bell, the traditional way or the tatau. His story that he grew up was the Tongans created the Samoan kufunga. It was they were forced to learn um, how to tattoo, so they can tattoo the Tongan bell as a punishment. So if you're a Tongan historian, a Samoan historian, yeah, man, let's debate it. I want to hear both
Yeah,
sides
yeah, I like
Mm,
it.
because that's not the story that I grew up with. So yeah, let's hear it.
mm,
So story of who has a response, right, to that. Um, oh, that's not what I wanted there. Let me pull this up correctly. Sorry. What's what are your guys' thoughts, Mr. Mautekelangi? Anything from your perspective from the Tongan side?
Well, I don't know any history throughout Polynesia of where actually tattoo started from, but we do know it's uniquely Polynesian. And there are some islands in Polynesia that marked um, people who had been banned from society or who were considered um, prisoners of society to have certain tattoo markings. Um, and one thing you need to understand is that in oral history throughout Polynesia, there's a lot of times because we live on small islands and we don't want to disturb the peace. We want to maintain the peace. There's unwritten things that everybody knows but nobody says.
mm,
And
mm,
so and so the fact that he's bringing up the question, is it's usually something that's not done in the open traditionally. So like, but having a podcast like this is kind of like traditionally been taboo. But I
mm,
think we're in modern times where things deservedly should be discussed openly, and the truth is the truth. But the fact that it's just hard to say who started tattoos, but it's difficult to say that it wasn't Tonga because the earliest tattoo kit was found in Tonga before
Yes.
anywhere else, and so that's a archaeological fact. And so to go against archaeological fact, where do you draw the line? I don't know, but it's an interesting conversation to have.
mm.
Mr. Atero?
Yeah, no, I'll share my interaction. So, my wife is part Samoan, and her Samoan family are from Solo Solo, Vayala, and where else? And Lepea. And her grandfather grew up in Samoa, played for Manu Samoa. He's 91. So I asked him, certain histories regarding the tattoo, because he's not tattooed with the Songai Miki or the Pea. And I asked him what his thoughts, because he's lived a very long life, you know, for Polynesian male get to their 90s, it's
He's seen a lot.
n-
He's seen and
he's
heard a
seen a
lot.
lot, and you don't hear it, especially Polynesian males. We don't. It's women. It's kind of a lot of them get to that age, but Polynesian males don't really get to that age. So I asked him, what was his what was his experience with the, and he said when he was growing up as a kid, it wasn't a big thing how it is now in Samoa. And he said when he was about a teenager, he said he heard some guys also get it. And with this, I know they have like a certain protocol that is doing it now, and they've kind of developed it into like this culture of service. And I see, and this is the thing, when he grew up, he's 91 or 90 years old. It wasn't a thing. It could have just been like like when you say tufunga, these are very specialized
Skill sets. Yeah,
skill,
people.
right? And it could have been maybe that certain family, because it was revived in Samoa, because it was the what family, or Shuape family, that's kind of brought it up, and it's kind of made it a normalized thing, especially in Samoa customs. But he said growing up, it wasn't a thing, and it just came up, and then they developed certain cultural things of ceremony of people getting it. So to me, what I interpret that as, that maybe it was just a village thing that specialized in their certain designs, and maybe certain tufungas that didn't last or didn't make it to today is maybe have gone or lost. But the one that's more dominant, that you see a lot, that's been taught to other tattooists or other tufungas, that could have been from that same family of the Suluape that's kind of revived the tattooing in Samoa. But see, and that's the thing. If it wasn't a big thing till when he was young, and then then he grown up, especially when he was a teenage boy, and then it's become developed something, and just like
No, but that,
anything, when
that
you
that it's going back. This is going back to the point that I made.
yeah.
When the Pacific Islands were being Christianized, they stopped a lot of the traditions being passed down. And even in Samoa, the tattooing was stopped.
Mm,
When this Christianization process, and call it, when these countries were being colonized, traditional navigation was not allowed to be passed on. Even the language was not allowed to pass on. A lot of the culture, like in Samoa, tattooing, and even Tonga. Tonga had a history of tattooing, but when they became Christianized, they even have laws that were written into the Vava'u Code, and the
Codified
early
law.
laws, the codified law against having tattoos. And
mm,
so it's easy to understand that that's exactly what happened across Polynesia,
mm,
and even in Samoa. And since we're talking about tattooing, it was gone for a while. A few families held on to it, and it got revived.
mm.
And just because it got revived in one place in Polynesia, it doesn't mean it was revived in all the other places. Like in Tonga, it never got revived. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean Tongans didn't have tattoos. When it's clear throughout history,
Recorded history. The Europeans
recorded
recorded it
history,
pretty heavily.
Tongans did have a tattoo culture. And so just to say that, oh, Tonga doesn't have a tattoo culture in the year 2000, so they never had it in the past. That's a false premise, because we know throughout colonization and Christianity, a lot of the traditional practices were stopped.
Mm.
No,
Yeah. So
100%. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead, Masi.
No, no. I was gonna say, so yeah, just like what Maui Tegelangi was saying. So my understanding is, I'm just trying to figure out what's the purpose, right? Like the gentleman shared that it was it for punishment. That could have been one, and then Maui Tegelangi shared that there are some oral histories that in Tonga that it was a mark of somebody doing something they're not supposed to, right? But obviously it's kind of evolved, because what is it now? It's kind of a good thing of saying your service, right?
Mm.
And that's what I'm trying to understand, because no one really knows what the purpose, because he was gone for a while. What's the purpose of getting that's out? I've heard some other theories of it was putting the mark of trying to navigate when you couldn't tell the stars when you're navigating the ocean. So there's a bunch of different theories, and that's what we're trying to dissect, and I'm trying to understand myself about it. So I mean, that's just
Yeah.
what I've heard. Just my
The
experience.
in Tongan culture and history, um, most men could get a tattoo except the Tuitonga and the heir to the Tuitonga. They were not allowed to get a tattoo,
Mm.
and so yeah, they
Well,
were not allowed to get a tattoo.
no, and that's what's also interesting, and I think one of the reasons why, to me, it's been helpful for me to not look at at Polynesia as an isolated, quote unquote, boundaries like we have today. And if you think of it more as an empire and a flow of ideas, like you mentioned, Maui, we don't know exactly where the tattoos come from. But if this is a new technology or a new idea, I can tell you when you look at other empires, those ideas flow to the capital and then it
Mm.
seems to disperse from there, right? And so that's we know it was practiced by almost every other Polynesian out there, right? And people can modify it just like we
Mm.
do modifying tattoos today. Tattoos were used sometimes to, like the concentration camps, put your
Mm.
number on your hand, right? Sometimes they're
Identification.
tattoos because I'm part of
Mm.
a gang. We have history, some people's ideas of you would put your clan so that when you're fighting, you would know each other. There's all these
Yeah,
ideas out there.
yeah, that's another one. That's
Um,
correct.
but the one to really explain it best is like we talked about of the new boat technology. Whenever a new idea that is found to have some value, it makes it to the capital and then it gets dispersed all over. And the other interesting thing, just kind of going along with the tattooing, is Danny, when Masi and I looked at the first contact of Westerners with Ha'amoa, there were the high chiefs in Ha'amoa did not get tattooed.
Mm.
And the explanation that's usually given is because of their relation. It seems like the closer related you were to the Tuitonga, the less likely you were to get tattooed, because the explanation that they were given was because of their quote unquote aiki, it was forbidden to spill their blood. And obviously, when you're doing tattooing, blood gets spilled, and that's not acceptable for that sacredness of the blood. So
Mm.
very interesting. Some of the comments there. We'll jump to the story of Bo's response and to the video and kind of go from there. Let's bring this back here for us to look at.
Yeah, I can't help myself but laugh at all the new narrative that these people are trying to push and try to discredit what it is and what belongs to us Samoans. Now, the truth of the matter is when the daughter of Amalele married the Tuiha Takalawa and gave birth to a boy named Ngata. Now Ngata created his own kingdom in Hihifo, and he modeled his kingdom in the Whaamatai system of the Samoa. Hence why you have the Hingoa Whakanofo, the Eiki, you have the Tafa'is, you have the Matapules, and you have all of this. So all of this, they are all tied back to the Samoan system. Like you have the Tuyatua, and then you have the Tafa'is of the Tuyatua, you have the Tula Fales. The Tula Fales is the same as the Matapules. That was a system that he created within his kingdom. Now, he also took a lot of Samoan customs and Samoan part of the Samoan culture and incorporated it into his kingdom. And this is the line that eventually became the dominant line of the Tuitongas. Then there was when his line was created, it became there were three lines of the Tuitonga. It was the Tuitonga, Tuiatakalawa, and the Tuikano line, and eventually the Tuikano became the most dominant line. Where to this day, Tuikano or the Ano of Upolu, the flesh of Upolu line, is currently ruling the kingdom of Tonga. But all of this ties back to Ngata. Hence why in Tonga you have the Kakawolunga, you have the Kailao. All of these are part of the Samoan culture. Now, when it comes to the pea, and the tattooing. I know across Polynesia, across the Pacific, every island had their own method of tattooing. They had their own tattoos. But when it comes to the Pea, there's the story that the friend, the Tongan friend of Ace, told him is completely bullshit or completely bollocks.
I,
Because if
I,
you understand,
I find that so rich after hearing this whole line of baloney. Homeboy's comeback is everything that other
BS.
guy said is BS. Anyways, that was too good. We'll there's that. Oh, dude, this is a 10-minute video. I don't know. Let's give him a few more. Let's anything to add here. Any responses here before we continue? I didn't realize this thing's 10 minutes.
No, no. See, you can. I just want to say something real quick. He doesn't understand the relationship between the um the relationship between the Tui Tonga and Tui Hatakalaua and the Tui Kanukupolu. And the Amma who came from Kupolu is actually Amma who came from Kupolu is actually they're actually Tongans.
Really?
Well,
Because
yes.
there's been a lot of comments
See, because let me
yeah.
okay, let me kind of give a background history. So when Kaul Fonua Fekai,
Before
so
you get
so
into it, real quick, Danny,
yeah,
let me add here because UTOL became our newest paying member. We make sure we take care of our paying members. He says, Masi, this guy, I don't know how they are so confident with no school. What here, UTOL? Well, this is the education. Maui Teke Langi is going to give the Polynesian Eyes Kava session education, UTOL.
no, that's what's so funny. That's what I'm saying is so funny about how he talks about the Tu'ikanukupolu as if it was a kingdom on his own, and he says his kingdom. It wasn't his kingdom. Being a Tu'ikanukupolu was a responsibility.
Mm.
He didn't have a kingdom. The kingdom belonged to the Tu'itonga. When he was made the the Tu'ikanukupolu, he was given a responsibility over the all the people in Tonga. It was like a local responsibility. So the Tu'ikanukupolu was to make sure that all the land which belonged to the Tu'itonga was cultivated by the people and made the
Productive.
general use of the land was being used properly for the benefit of the whole um, kingdom. The Tu'iha Takalaua was responsible for preparing and presenting the the Polo Polo and the Inasi to the Tu'itonga and gathering the whole country, including the Tu'ikanukupolu, which had protocols in handing over um, everything from the entire country, all the tribute and everything to the Tu'ihatakalawa, and then the Tu'ihatakalawa presented it to the Tu'itonga. The Tu'ihatakalawa was also in charge of trade with the countries outside of Tonga. And so if you look at all the important places for the rest stops for canoes and everything, they're all related to the Tu'iha Takalawa. The Tu'iha Takalawa had charge of those places. So Tu'iha Takalawa was kind of like border control, like immigration and border control.
Mm.
And so I mean it's he 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 talks about the Tu'iha Takalawa and the Tu'ikanigupolu like they're separate kingdoms. They're not separate kingdoms because but the reason why they think that way is because that's how it is in Samoa. This king is his own king separate from this
Chieftains.
king. Yeah, its
Mm.
own chiefdoms, its own
Mm.
Tuya Anna, is different
Tuya
from
Tua.
Tuya Tua. It's like but in Tonga they had separate functions, but everything belonged to the Tuitonga. So right off the bat, you can tell that he doesn't know what he's talking about because he talks about the Tu'ikanugupolu and the creation of Ngata See, if and that's where he should have caught himself if he was a serious historian right away. What does this sound like? A chief from Samoa is brought to the Tu'i Hatakalaua to marry the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and his son becomes the Tu'i Kanukupolu, the first Tu'i Kanukupolu. Does that sound like
Invasion.
invasion? Or does that sound like an arranged marriage and this is how we're going to set up our system? And right off the bat you can tell that this is it this it's he has concepts of Western
Mm.
kingdoms and kingship being meshed with what happened traditionally here in Tonga and Samoa, not understanding it at all. And so that's why you can totally discredit just how he describes it. He doesn't understand. And what he needs to understand is that where Ama came from in Upolu, yes, they came from Samoa, but it was from a Samoan village that was created to support Kaulfonua Fekai when Kaulfonua Fekai lived in Samoa. And
Mm.
so they were Tongans that followed the Tu'itonga. They settled number of places in Upolu, and then when the Tu'itonga came back 5 generations later to the kingdom of Tonga, he was sent for to bring his daughter, because after coming back to Tonga and talking with the Tu'i Hatakalaua, they realized they needed to create another line of kings because the country was growing, there was bigger population, whatever the reason was. And so the Tu'i Tonga told Ama to come back with his daughter, married the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and they created the third line of
Yeah.
kings.
I want
And
to
that's
add
how the
something real quick there, Danny. I think this is where it's important. Like you said, zoom out and think not Samoa, not Tonga, not think Polynesian Empire under the Tu'itonga and a rich history that has been like this. These are the same families, these are the same group of people. And he's kind of right off the bat, he's presenting Samoa as an independent nation that never really existed as an independent nation, coming to Tonga like it was a
well,
separate
well,
nation.
let see, and this is the way that current Samoans think of Samoa is a Western academic construct. So Samoa was given their independence, but it wasn't the time of Kaulufonua Fekai. It was at the time of Momo and Tu'itatui. Momo, which is like close to 1,000 years, actually 400 years, probably about 400 years before Kaulfonua Fekai, is when Momo and his son Tu'itatui was when, and Momo was actually the one who kind of gave Samoa their independence. But as part of their independence, they had to be cut off from what was considered the cradle of Polynesia, or the root. They were cut off from the root. They were made to be a branch, like the rest of the Polynesian islands were considered branches to the root.
Mm.
Mm.
And so Samoa was independent from that time. That's why the whole story about Sangone and Kava, the Tu'itonga gave Kava, or authority, to each head of the family, Ulumotua, or head of the family, to be their own chief in their own island or their own village. And so that's why the Samoan Kava bowl has multiple legs to represent all the multiple islands and villages of each chief that has their own Kawa.
Mm.
And
So
so,
real quick, when you say independent in that nature, it's not quote unquote independent as separate, but it's a status within. It's like statehood, a separate state, like
Yeah.
no,
West
no,
Virginia
Rich,
becoming
Rich,
West Virginia
no,
rather
no,
than
no, 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 no,
part
no,
of
no,
Virginia.
no. That's not what happened. See, that's how the Samoans take it, because they think of Samoa as a separate state. But what it was each independent extended family had their own autonomy. So each village and each island in Samoa had their own kava, so they were considered like independent villages.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
it was like it's like the Greek city states. Each city state was their own. Each village was their own. They had their own. And then what Tonga's policy towards Samoa after that? Well, and another thing is Samoans used to have a H in their language. This is where the whole term. This is where the word. This is where the word fa'asa comes from. Because one of the conditions was because in the olden days, whenever a navigator found a new island, he had the tangata ifonua rights to that island, and him and his family had certain rights because they were the ones he was the one who found that new land. But to help separate them, and it was kind of like a protection for them too to enforce their rights, they took one letter or switched one letter in the language. And that's how the branches were differentiated from the root of Polynesia. When the Tu'itonga allowed Lafai, who was from Savaii, and kind of Savaii and Kupolu, Savaii and Kupolu went along um, with Lafai, what Lafai believed in. So Savaii was actually Hawaii too. It was also Hawaii. But they were told to fa'asa or fa'asa, that means to make an S. Every evening, every chief and every village in throughout the Samoa had to bring his extended family together, and they had to practice replacing the language, replacing the H with the S. And that's what fa'asa, the term fa'asa came from.
Mm. Mm.
It's
Okay.
they changed their whole language to be like from H to S, and that was the that what and of course everyone wanted to do that because it was a self-interest. Everyone wants to be their own chief independent, so they all did forced their kainga to take out the H and replace it with the S, and that's where fa'asa comes from. And then that's why Tongans have a word that they say to Samoans when they come in Fiepoto, because intermarrying over the generations, of course, there is intermarriages, and then you get Samoans who are used to being minded, and they tend to speak out of turn. And so a Tongan will turn to a Samoan when they speak out of turn and say "sa."
Mm.
"Sa" means remember. We made you change your language to put
Fa'asa.
S. Remember, we made you put S in your language. That's what sa'a means.
Okay. So if I understand this correctly, Danny, what you're saying is prior to that, Ha'amoa was treated as
The center,
extension of Tongatapu and
the
everything
root.
else,
It was
and it
still
was
considered part of the
managed.
root.
It was a
Yes.
first-hand management. Then through this transition, they were said, okay, and I'm sure there were probably leadership in Ha'amoa lobbying for it, right? Because there's certain benefits of that. They're lobbying for it. And Momo saying, okay, we'll give you what you want, but you lose certain privileges. It's like when Queen Elizabeth
Yeah. It's
told,
a give and take. It's a give and take.
yes, it's
And
it's
so
what the Queen of England told Harry. Was it Harry and his American wife? What's the one that
Myrtle or something. What's
Meghan
her?
Merkel,
Merkel?
Megan.
What's her husband?
Markle,
The
is she
was it?
Is she American or
She's
Canadian?
American. She's American. And that's what happened is Queen Elizabeth said, okay, if you're not going to commit to fulfill the responsibility of the royal family, cut. You don't get the benefits of the royal family if you aren't going to directly fulfill those. And they modified their responsibility. Ah, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
And
Hmm.
so this is and see the story of the kava, the story of the kava, you know, when and finding the shell of Sangone, finding the shell of Sangone, it talks about this time when Momo let Samoa to become kind of like independent and gave a kava to all the the heads of family, ulumutua of all the different ainga in Samoa. And so that's the meaning, that's the metaphorical meaning of when the rat nibbled on the kava that grew at the
Mm.
head when
And got
kava was
dizzy.
buried. Yeah, of the story of the kava. The many the rat nibbled on it and got drunk, got nibbled on the kava and is a symbol of power. They got drunk of power. And a lot of the kaingas, they got rid of their ulumotuas because they were th- you know, they weren't being good leaders. They were forcing everybody. And then some of the rats that nibbled on the kava, they happened to nibble on the sugarcane or the to at the foot of the where kava was buried. And when they nibbled on the to, it helped get rid of the drunkenness, their kona from the kava. And this is the origin. This is this story of what happened to Samoa at this time, because that's exactly what happened. A lot of the ulumotua of the various ainga, they thought it was easy to be a leader and to manage people. And then when they weren't able to, like, chaos actually ensued in Samoa. There were constant wars and arguments going on inside families, with neighboring families, neighboring villages. And some of the the chiefs came back to the Tuitonga for advice, asked to intermarry, and even Lafai actually went and asked for the daughter of the Tuitonga because he thought that he would be popular, but then he realized people didn't. When everyone has their own freedom, no one respects anybody. And so he went and asked for a daughter of the Tuitonga to marry into the Tuitonga line to help establish his prestige and order, which he thought he could.
He
And
tried
so,
to go back after he jumped off the ship.
yes, and that's the symbol. That's the symbol of the rat um, nibbling on the to. The sweetness gets rid of the bitterness of the kava, and this is the origination. This is the origin of the word poto. Poto is made up of two root words: po, which means night, and to, which means sugarcane. It means to be in a dark place, and then
Sweet and dark.
when you get sweet, and then you're like, ah, it's like the light goes off. You learn from your mistakes. That's what poto means. Poto doesn't really mean to be smart. It's taken on the meaning to be smart,
You
but
learn something.
it's you learn something. Eh? But now it's used in Tonga and Samoa as poto. All across Polynesia, this didn't happen, and that's why all the rest of Polynesia, from Tahiti to Hawaii, if you're smart, they say atamai. You have a good atamai. The reason why they don't use poto is because this history was strictly between Tonga and Samoa. Only Tonga and Samoa use the word poto.
Mm.
The rest of
Interesting.
Polynesia use the akamai, atamai.
Atamai, yes.
Mm, okay.
And so that's why, like, this is gonna be hard for a lot of Samoans to swallow, but that's the actuality and all the stories. And I'm bringing you the stories and the facts, known known stories that are metaphors of actual things that happened.
Mm.
But because it's very impolite to say things directly, especially the Tongan way, because we have a lot of Samoan cousins and relatives. Even the Tuitonga back then had a lot of nephews and cousins and nieces. They're all Samoans. They decided to go that way. But Tongan history recorded all this that happened in a metaphoric story, which many historians have written in different places, different generations that tell the same story about the Kava and Sangone. And the fact is the facts, you
You know
know.
what's funny? And we'll come back to the video. I didn't realize 10 minutes, but this is great stuff. You know what my favorite thing about this is?
What's
What?
up?
You know how you're saying, we're telling it straight with the facts. There's the comments seen here. We're not going to get to every comment. Oh, what's the facts? What's the facts? You know what's funny? Yeah, like, look here. Like, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Like, deleting comments, are we? I can't tell you how many times we get this comment. Oh, shoot. Look, there's another comment that came up before I could get back to it, right? Guys, we don't delete comments unless you're going to say the F-bomb or something just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Comments don't get deleted on the Polynesian Eyes podcast and our social media. We want the comments. But this is what I was going to say, Danny. They're going to say, give us the evidence. We brought the guy who had more evidence than anyone 30 years. He brought DNA evidence. He brought archaeological evidence. He brought all this other stuff. And the same people in the chat right now who are saying, bring the evidence, are the same people who said, bring the evidence to the scientist who brought all the evidence. So there are some people, when certain people say you need more evidence, we're like, oh, from certain people, you've devalued your currency.
Yeah.
You're still in the poll and no toll for you.
No toll for you.
Yeah. No, but these are where this is where the word poto comes from. It's
Mm.
because of what happened with Lafai, who got this idea that the Tuitonga was autocratic.
Hey,
And
Danny,
that-
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know the last name Fui Maono?
Yeah.
Where they come from?
Samoa and Niua.
In Niua.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I heard from one of our viewers. Guess who story of Bo's last name is?
Fui Maano.
It's Fui Maono.
So is he from the Samoan? It's basically the same family. They're related. The Fui Maano in Niua and in Samoa, but which one does he come from?
I don't know. It's just
I
that
think-
someone.
I would guess Samoa.
Yeah, well, he's Samoan. He said he grew up in Samoa, but one of our viewers was like, I know the Fui Maonos from there in Samoa, and they're Tongan. He said, this guy better be careful because there's a good chance he has a strong tie to Tonga. Which
No, but
yeah.
see, that's what I mean. It's too many Tongans and Samoans. They frame Polynesia as the different countries that it is today, but it wasn't like that back in the day.
100%.
And as a matter of fact, even if we went back to how it was back then, you had greater loyalty and affiliation from the clan that you came from than your geographic position.
Mm.
For
Yeah.
example, in Samoa or in Tonga, you would have two villages that are neighbors geographically on the map.
But
And they would have
oppositionally and by clan.
They would have
yeah.
fine relations and everything, but they would have greater affiliation and loyalty to a different island that they hardly had contact with, but they're from the same clan.
Yeah. No, 100%.
That's how it was in the olden days. And it's funny, a lot of like this guy right here, the Fui Maono here, he's speaking too much in geographical terms of how the world is set up today.
Mm.
But
Western
in
perspective.
it's a Western perspective. It's more geographical. If you went back in the olden days, it's more about the family clan that you come from, the tribe that you come from, and those clans were spread out in all the islands.
No, 100%. And one of
Tahiti,
yeah,
Rarotonga.
one of the evidences we saw that Mussy when we did the when Ulkalala and them assassinated what was the name of the Tuikan Kupolu?
Um,
Tukuaho.
Tuguaho.
mm,
It was evident, like you're saying there, Danny, when they came back to Ha'apai, a bunch of the chiefs in Ha'apai, instead of you would think like, oh, these are Ha'apai chiefs, where do they take off to?
mm,
A lot of them go to Ha'amoa because, like you're saying, this is not about geography and independent nations. This is
Yeah.
where is my closest clan that I can
Your
find
rely
some
family.
on.
Yes.
security with
Mm,
and I
Yes.
can
Yes.
trust. And
Yeah.
so this is the kind of thing that we're kind of discussing here, and we've mentioned many times, just like we mentioned earlier, framing it from a zoomed in Samoa Tonga. When you zoom out and look at Polynesian Empire with the capital on Tongatapu, things make more sense when you kind of things flow better. But let's come back. Let's come back to the video here and have story of who continue for another couple minutes, and then we'll pause.
And the old gods of Samoa, the times of the Tangaloa Langi clan, when it existed, Tangaloa resided in the ninth heaven, or Langi Sautuaiva. There were nine heavens, nine stages of heaven. So on the Langi Sautuavalu, or on the eighth heaven of Tangaloa, is where all his Fa'atufunganga resided. None of the tufungas were, or the knowledge of the tufungas was with the common people. It was only with the gods. And what I mean by the tufungangas of Tangaloa, I'm talking about the tufunga faufali, that is the master carpenter, the tufunga fauva, the master boat builder, the tufunga tatatau, the master tattooist, and so forth. The different tufungas, or the tufungangas of Tangaloa, were all in the eighth heaven until Tangaloa decided to give it to the common people and created masters on Earth, or on in Samoa. Now,
You know what that actually kind of reminds me more of, Danny?
Yeah.
The story of Momo giving Ha'amoa their kava. That seems to be more of a parallel to that, but just a thought there. Who knows?
goes back now. Let's go back to the story of where the tattoo comes from. Where we still have that debate: did it come from Fiji, as in Fiji Islands, or did it come from Fiji? Because the Fijians, they don't believe that it came from them. So we believe that the tattoo
I can't tell you how many Fijians would disagree with that 1000%. There's a lot of Fijians who say all of tattoo comes from Fiji. But homeboy over here says, oh, the Fijians, they say it's not them. You know, interesting.
the tattooing and the tattooing tools came from Fitiuta. Why would we believe that it came from Fitiuta? Because the nine heavens, or the Langi Sautuaiva of Tangaloa, was in Manua, where Fitiuta actually is. Now, if you look at the claim by this person that said that it was created as a punishment for us, we never tattooed any of the common people of Tonga. The Samoans only tattooed the royal family of Tonga, only the royal family. Hence why when the royal and the Tongans had their own tufungas, but they were not allowed to tattoo any of the royal family, the king and his family. Why? Because they are commoners. They don't have the same status as them. Hence why the king Tupo, there's evidence that Tupo was a tattooed man himself. He had a bear. He was a Songa Imiki, and most of his royal family, they all traveled to Samoa. Even when he made the decree to ban tattooing in Tonga, the royal family members of Tonga still come to Samoa, and there is an understanding where the only the Samoan people are allowed to touch the bodies of the king and his royal family. Now, you ask me, what evidence do you have?
Okay. All right. Any feedback to that? Any thoughts? Lot was covered there.
No, it's the a lot of Tongan royalty and chiefs went to Samoa just because it was easier than because of the tapu that surrounded the chiefs and royal family in Tonga. It's just as simple as that. It's
mm,
it's not. But even the Tuitonga himself and his heir were never tattooed. They
mm.
were never tattooed.
and that's the thing that I find funny is there is written historical fact that even the high chiefs in Samoa were not tattooed. And and on one of the boats in Manono, a guy comes on the boat
Mm.
completely free of tattoos, and they state that because it sounds like they're like, oh, there's other people tattooed. This one guy comes on, and I think they were French guys, and the French guys go, we thought this could be the Tuitonga or one of the greatest high chiefs here in Samoa because he wasn't tattooed. The simple fact that he had zero tattoos on him,
Yeah.
the French were like, "Oh, this is someone important, right?" And it could be the Tuitonga. Even back then, in the 1800s, early no 1700s, in the 1700s, they knew right off the bat. So I find it interesting, like these things, and this is actually a very common that what's viewed as like I guess an attack from the Samoans to the Tongans is, oh, all your royal blood comes from Ha'amoa, you commoners. And remember, Masi, we did a whole podcast on this.
Right.
The definition of commoner and royalty means you have to have a monarch, and you have to have scale, and you have to have all these things. And that's even before you get to the history of the bloodlines and so forth.
No,
But
no,
even
no,
structurally,
but even, I mean, since we're talking about it, let's just be, I guess we're talking straight now. The reason why they were called the Tu'ikanukupolu was to show that it was a low ranked king.
yeah, they get
The
butthurt
fact
about
the
it, but
fact that
that's the
they were
truth.
called Kakano of Upolu, it's okay. This is the Samoan blooded king, which automatically in Tonga means you're a third ranked
Outsider.
king, which is exactly what he was. You had the Tui Tonga and then the Tui Hatakalaua, and then Tui Kanukupolu was the lowest ranked king.
Mm. Yeah. Right. No, and I was just gonna ask you, Danny, even why does the name, Ngata being the first Tuikang Polo, does that have a meaning of why it's called Ngata? Since we're talking about the Tuikang Polo and it's out of the rank of status, just by blood, is the third lowest of the three kings. Is there significant?
There is a significance, and when Kaulufonua Fekai was trying to establish his younger brother as the Tui Kanukupolu, as the Tui Hatakalaua.
Mm.
Um, he was trying to separate some of the powers. He wanted to avoid this idea that the Tui Tonga was autocratic, and he wanted to kind of create a balance of power in Tonga. So the Tui Tonga would hold on to as owner of all the land and take on the more, because the Tui Tonga was considered more like a priest king. They had priest functions in the ancient religion,
Religion. Mm.
and so he tried to maintain the priestly functions of the Tuitonga, and as the owner of the land, and kind of like more of the political function of the Tuitonga, to give that entirely to his younger brother as the Tuiha Takalaua. And so when he tried to establish his younger brother as the Tuiha Takalaua, and he still resided in Tonga, they weren't going to the person that he had appointed to take care of the political affairs of the kingdom. They still ended up coming to him. So what he needed to do, and what he did, was he had to remove himself physically from Tonga so that all the chiefs and the people of Tonga would
Be forced to go to him.
be forced to go to his younger brother to call all the shots and establish himself. And so that's why Kaulfonua Fekai um, removed himself, and he resided in Samoa, and he would only go once a year to the Polo Polo, which was the presentation of the first fruits in December, and he would send a representative, which would be a son or a nephew or a grandson to represent him in the Inasi, which happened in July. So the Inasi and the Polo Polo, if it wasn't the Tuitonga, it would be a son, grandson, or nephew for July. But the Tuitonga would definitely go every December for the Polo Polo, which was the religious presentation of the first fruits. And so from Kaulufonua Fekai, for 4 generations, the Tuitonga resided in Samoa. And that's when Ama and all these Tongan villages
Go
were
to
established in
Upolu and all
Samoa.
those areas.
And so when the Tuitonga moved back and they were going to create the Tuikanugupolu line, so what happened was when the Tuitonga moved back, it was almost as if the Tuihatakalawa had kind of fully established themselves and they were brushing off the Tuitonga.
Got a little too independent.
Got a little too independent.
So what you're
And
saying is
so-
that Tuihatakalaua had a little too much cover, was getting a little bit
Yeah,
zigzaggy
so-
a little bit.
they agreed to bring one of the Tuitonga's relatives, one of his chiefs and his relatives from Samoa, to marry the Tuihatakalaua, and then his son would take on more of the
Mm.
political responsibilities in handling the affairs of the kingdom, and then the Tuihatakalaua would also be considered a sacred king and only carry out his duties those 2 times in the year, and also kind of act as like the buffer zone for like immigration. And that's why the Tuihatakalaua has throughout most of Tonga, all the islands in Tonga, the best wharfage and piers for canoes and stuff, rest stops, belong to the Tuihatakalaua.
Mm. No, that makes sense. Hey, here's interesting that here's another. Want to say thank you to Devita Toefoki.
Sorry, real quick,
go ahead.
quick. And that's why the Tuitonga named the Tuihatakalawa's son Ngata, because he was putting to an end to their disagreements with his younger brother, the Tuihatakalawa.
Mm.
Because Ngata means to put an end to.
Bring to an end to. So
Yeah.
drawing a line in the sand, bringing back order, and that will come
Yeah.
important later on when we revisit another similar situation. But this is Tevita Toefoki, has the symbol there as a paying member, so I appreciate the support there, Tevita. And he says the Tuitonga that went to Samoa for the tattoo is, we'll just say Paula. He kindly left out the other letter, which is incorrect, probably spelling over that Tuitonga.
Well, actually, it is Pau's son Fuanunuyava who broke the tapu. It's not
Okay.
Pau's son
Pau's son.
Fuanunuyava was the first Tuitonga to break the tapu of getting a tattoo.
Yeah. And he says, which then Ulkalala questioned why a Tuitonga getting a commoner's tattoo. That's when Ulkalala started questioning if the Tuitonga is not a god. So this is what happens when you break protocol, possibly, right? You break protocol, people start saying, well, what's going on here? You get chaos when you break protocol. So, all right, let's come back to story of who.
Developed this kingship and his kingdom, and he had this sort of system. Boats, the master to build his houses and everything. They were all Samoans, and he put all Samoans to as his matapules and to all like and the Ldks, and still exists to this day. So if you look at when the king of Tonga departs from this earth, right? When the king of Tonga dies, you will see there is one particular figure that stands to guard the coffin of the king. And this person is known as Lawaki. Now, there's only one person in Samoa that held the Pule Lawaki, that had the title Lawaki in Tonga, and the title Namulau Ulu in Samoa was Lawaki Namulau Ulu, the first leader of the Maua Pule. Now, Lawaki is very significant because he's the only figure in Tonga that stands next to the coffin of the deceased king with a toto and fue. Now, there's no other culture in the whole of the Pacific that stands with a toto and fue except for Samoa. And now Lawaki in tradition is known as the undertaker of the king. He is the only person who is allowed to touch the body of the deceased king of Tonga. Now, now that shows you the level of understanding there is between Samoa and Tonga, because kano kupolu, tui kano kupolu, the line kano kupolu is a ano of upolu, or the flesh of upolu. The lineage traces its roots back to upolu. Now, whatever this person said that this was done as a punishment for the Samoans, yes, there was evidence of the Tongans' rulership in Samoa, but they did not rule all of Samoa. Now, let me pose a question to you. Wherever the Tongans were, you have remnants of the walls that they built, of the foundation of the houses, or they even name places that they were at after Tongan names. Now, in Samoa, the only place where there is evidence of the rulership of the Tuitonga was in Savai, the big island of Savai, where you have the pool of Paimoa, where they used to throw Samoans into that hole as a punishment. Now, the only time that the Tongans actually mentioned them setting foot
Hey,
in Upolu is
hey, it's getting a little emotional. Okay, well, we'll let him finish this and then we'll
when
pause.
they came for this invitational that they came, and hence where Tuna Fata Savea and Ulumasui and the two sons of a chief from Alepata, where they started this war against the Tui Tonga Talefei in Alepata. And in Alepata, we have evidence where lands are named after this particular event. We have Satitoa. Satitoa, it means Satia Toa. Satia means the killing of warriors. Satia Toa, the killing of warriors. Which warriors? The Tongan warriors. Then you have the village of Malai La. Malai is the field and La is the sun. So the reason why
Hey.
this place was called Malai La is the whole name is called Malai Safa'alalai Tino o Tangata Tonga, which means this was the field where the bodies of the slain Tongan warriors was laid out drying in the sun. Now, even if you look at Tutuila, Talaifeki sent Lautivunia. Lautivunia.
Let's pause there. Lot to cover there. Okay. Flesh of Upolu, I think we've kind of answered that a little bit. That was actually, in a sense, a marker that it's not a direct power in Tongatapu. But how about his other points? Anything stuck out to the discussion here?
No, not really. I mean, we know. I think the only thing that pops out of that the main thing is to understand that what happened with Talakai Faiki, it wasn't a war. It was more like a skirmish. And the Tuitonga said that he'll never come again, as if he ever visits Samoa again, he'll never come to make war, but just as a friendly visit. But if you understand the Tongan history, and so if you count the generations from Talakai Faiki up to Momo, which is a good number of centuries, the policy of Tonga towards Samoa after Momo gave Samoa kind of like their independence, the policy and Samoa was cut from the root to become a branch, no longer part of the root. The policy of Tonga towards Samoa was more of soft power, and they achieved the soft power by marrying into the important families, picking which families to marry to that would fit Tonga's agenda, not just in the local politics in Tonga, but also in the politics of soft power and influencing Samoa.
Mm.
And so what Talakai Faiki says when he's in when he's leaving on the canoe and shouting Marieto Marietau and whatever words he said after that, he's no longer going to come back to war, but just as a relative and a friend on a friendly visit. He's basically in a way restating what Tonga's um, policy towards Samoa was since Momo gave Samoa their independence.
Mm.
He wasn't really saying, in other words, Talakai Faiki was not saying something new. He was just rephrasing, because a lot of these guys, you know, all these guys, these warriors that he named, some of them were actually his nephews by blood. They were blood relatives.
No, and that's the interesting thing. Remember, Masi, when we spoke with Jake Fitzimanu, that's according to from Jake's perspective,
Yeah.
right? Talakai Faiki's mother was Samoan, and from their perspective, the village where it happened was his mother's village. Like it was like, dude, like it was like so, like you're saying, this is all blood, and it's always kind of like stuck in my head because what within the same generation or the next generation, the Marietoa marry into Talakai Faiki's daughters, one of Talakai Faiki's daughters. And that's where like that's what
No. It's a couple generations. I think it's 200 years later.
200 years later. Oh, it kind of sounded to me when I first heard it like it was like
No.
relatively soon after
Nah,
that
it was
situation.
so 200 years. We're talking about like 5 generations later.
Okay. So it's very interesting because it is like a family affair, literally. You doesn't get more family. So the question now becomes, if that's where Talakai Faiki, if that's true and accurate, that's Talakai Faiki's mom's village, Homeboy was probably visiting that, maybe even grew up there sometime, spent time there, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
this whole situation, it made me think like, was this by design? Is this like the ancient propaganda efforts that we see today where you stage a quote unquote revolution and a war, and then this new line comes up and it becomes a very influential line, and you take on the Marietoa statement. And who knows? I don't know. Politics is a funny thing. I wanna highlight one of our paying members comment here, and he may have missed it in the beginning. Mr. Ateroa, can you please answer this question from UTOL? Get him on the podcast, please.
Yeah, UTOL. We have multiple occasions. He agreed before to come on, and then coming to schedule a time to come on the podcast, he has backed out, and he's even said he's not gonna react to any of our episodes. But obviously, he's looking for some content to talk about. So he's been using our content, and maybe a constant. He has us on on his dial when we come up, and he's probably watching now if he's always responding to our videos.
Yeah.
But we have already put the invitation UTOL.
And it's fortunate for us, but unfortunate for him. He reminds me of, you guys remember the movie Mask of Zorro, right?
Mhm,
You know
Yeah.
the
yeah.
movie Mask of Zorro. After Antonio Banderas's brother gets killed, and then he's drunk in the bar, right? And Antonio Banderas in that moment is story of who, right? He's there. He's been egged on by all his Samoan followers, and because he's recognized as one of the great, influencers of history, and he's all pumped up. He's drunk the Kool-Aid, and homeboy's running out to go and fight the American soldier that shot his brother. And the only difference is, or maybe we're the old Zorro. Maybe I'll take that back. Maybe we're the old Zorro, and and we're just stopping him and say, you are fighting very bravely, but you are going to die very quickly. And that's literally what's happening with Story of Bo. I admire that he's responding. It's good for us. But he's dying very quickly here. And see, and this is the mistake I think he's making. We gave him the benefit of the doubt when he was talking about stuff that's happening in Samoa, but every time he's crossed and tried to correct us, it hasn't been good for him. But now he's gotten so bold, he's stepping into Tonga Tapu now. Yeah,
Unfamiliar territory.
yeah. Now he's coming with this new idea of the Samoans invaded Tonga. And I'm starting to see this like the spear of Ama. I never heard of Ama Maui Tegelangi until this thing where it's like, that's why they said the spear of Ama conquered Tonga. Then I find out, oh, Ama is a
No,
close
no,
relative
no.
of
The
the two
spear.
Tonga.
See. What you need to understand, Tua, is spear of Amma means it's a metaphor when you cast when a chief or a warrior casts his spear and it lands on one of the kingly lines. It's a metaphor for having your daughter married to the king.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
Hey, Masi,
What's up?
I have a question for you to answer. This is from the moon. This guy is one of those on Facebook. He even has like a top follower content
Mm-hmm.
like thing next to him, but he's a big opposition. But he says, I would rather believe historians with PhDs and years of research than three guys podcasting for the bedroom and living room. Musty, have we
I,
had someone
I
with
have.
PhDs?
Let me say this to that comment. You know, all those PhDs that want to research Tonga, tell them Tua and Masi, who do they go to Tonga and interview to get the information for their PhDs? Who is that guy? Bring that up again.
Yeah,
Bring that up. Bring that up. What's his name?
the moon, the moon
Ainga.
ainga.
Damun Ainga. Damun Ainga. All those PhDs who want to do the research. Let me give you this question. Who do they go to Tonga and interview so they can get their PhD? Take a guess. Take a
Go-
guess.
So they go to the kava session and learn from there.
Who do they go interview to so they can earn their PhDs at the university? I'll take a guess, and I guess that's the end of that. Bye, Damun
And but here's the funny part, Masi, and share them. Did what happened, Masi, when we brought the guy with the PhDs and not just his PhDs, but uranium thorium dating PhD, coastal water flow PhD, all these PhDs,
Archaeology. Mm.
archaeology. What happened when we brought those PhD guys on too as well, Masi? We bring everybody, like Mr.
Correct.
Mautegelang is saying. We brought the guys who helped the guys get the PhDs, and we brought the guys with the PhDs.
Yeah, yeah. No. It's like I said. We open invitation because that is the Daranoa that we like to have, and we have people. We like to have people come with their ideas and let the ideas compete. And like Maui Tekelangi say, there's a reason why the PhDs in Polynesian or Pacific history, they have it, doctorate in Pacific history or Pacific Islands. They go and get it from the source, from people like Maui Tekelangi. So that's the info there for those, because PhD is all it is learning from somebody else.
All right, let's come back and finish the story of Poe. He was getting a little emotional earlier.
his cousin to go and conquer and take control of Tutuila. What did Lautivunia do? He went there and he stole the betrothed taupo to the taupo that was betrothed to the son of Maunga. His name was Wa'autoa. He stole her and stole her fine mat. And this angered Wa'autoa and led the rebellion that actually pushed back on the Tongans and their rulership that they tried to take over. Tutuila. Now, what evidence is there to prove that? Now, there is, if you're from Tutuila, you know the old marist school, right? Right behind the
The old one. You know the one that was so old that no one's ever heard of? Like that's usually what we hear when we say, "Hey, when was the Tui Manua in church?" This is the old one. That's the old Mary school, Masi. I just thought I wanted to bring
Okay.
that up. It's the
Okay.
old one. Not the old one, the
Mm.
old one.
old marriage school that is, I think now it's closed down. There's a piece of land there that is called Numia Atonga. Numia means to crush. So that land is called the crushing of the Tongans or Numia Tonga. And that's the evidence of what happened to the Tongans that came with Lautivunia. Lautivunia, it's
Oh, I guess that's it. That's it for that.
Hmm.
Any closing,
Okay.
any new Mia that we need to discuss here?
Hmm.
Nongahi mea. Huh?
Oh,
Koe ome.
Oh,
oh,
I'm hearing the background.
because
Wai puno whai ngā ai.
the
Wai
next video. Let me just
amo
Okay.
mea mai.
close.
Eh?
Let me just close that. Go ahead.
No, no. I was just gonna just summarize kind of what I've learned from this segment from story of who here. So pretty much Ha'amoa was part of the root, right? Then it was kind of cut off. Now it's part of the Polynesian state, like the branch, like every other Polynesian islands out there. And now it's just been kind of like the Tonga Tapu as the center. And another thing that I've kind of learned too is it makes sense of it used to, Ha'amoa was the Ha'amoa, but because they had to do the Sa, like Sa, then it came as Samoa. And that's where, because I've been hearing a lot of theories of like, where did
Sacred
Samoa
Center.
come from? And even like some Samoans would like share some Samoa something, but all it was is the s- the oral history is you guys had to change because you were cut off from the center, and then you become a state, a confederate state
Big boy, big girl.
with the capital, with the capital in
Mm.
Toatapu, and then go from Ha'amoa to Samoa. So that would help
Oh,
explain where that's come from, because there's so many theories of where Samoa came from, and I can't even keep track of how many theories there are.
Masi,
And then that seems to be, to me, that's what I've learned on this segment from us discussing on this
can I put that into a
And
story
and and
narrative?
and Samoa went from Akamai to Poto.
Poto. Yes.
So I want to put that into a storyline narrative, right? This is why we like nicknames. I think we learned it from Uncle Donald, maybe, and we like storylines and nicknames. But so what I'm hearing is there was mom and dad, that's the Tuitonga and the capital. There was an older child that was Samoa, and the older child who had everything taken care of for them, right? Don't have to worry about the bills. You just get
Mm,
the benefits of being in the home. And one day the child said, I'm tired of these rules.
mm.
I'm tired of mom and
Protocols.
dad. You
Mm.
know, what is this? I have to do chores, whatever. So mom and dad said, okay, son,
Give you
okay, son.
independent. Mm,
I'll give you your independence. But when you get your independence, I'm gonna take your cell phone away. I'm gonna take your internet away because you're now a big boy. You're now a big boy, right?
mm,
You're a big boy. Then after the first 2 months, the big boy came home and said, "Mom, Dad, uh, can you pay for my cell phone bill?
mm,
Can you take me out to dinner?" And it
mm,
sounded like mom and dad said, "Oh, because we love you, son. You still have to pay all your other bills, but we'll throw you a bone every once in a while and help you
mm,
out, right?" Because that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like the typical family story of big boy, big girl wants to wear big boy and big girl pants, and then got a little too scared and gotta gotta had to come back home and ask for some additional support.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that kind of is the situation. And I mean, even when you read the history books of Samoa, many of the villages throughout Samoa were still considered Tongan villages.
Mm.
Um, Even up to the point where Dubo the First um, was settling the civil war in Tonga. Once the civil war was settled in Tonga, a number of chiefs in Tonga wanted Dubo the First to also move into Samoa because a lot of Samoa are, there are relatives, and there were actually still chiefs in Tonga that had estates and ainga and land
in
in
Samoa.
Samoa. And so Dubo the First, it's very interesting because I've been rereading uh, some of the letters written back and forth between Dubo the First, Taufa'ahau, and the missionaries. The missionaries were strongly against it, the Wesleyan missionaries, because you know how. So what happened in the Pacific was a lot of the missionary groups and societies, they carved up the Pacific, and then if you moved into their territory, you had to get permission from them. And so the London Mission Society had the responsibility over Samoa, and Dubo the First started moving into Samoa because some of the chiefs in Tonga who still had ainga and land estates and villages in Samoa. But Dubo the First, when he started moving into Samoa and using all the Samoan relatives and connections that uh, the royal family and the chiefs had, it was the missionaries who told them to stop, especially the Wesleyan missionaries in Tonga. And he said, we're going to help. We're going to help Christianize Samoa because it seems like the London Mission Society aren't able to handle
Mm.
Samoa. But the Wesleyan missionaries just put their foot down and said no. And so Dubois the First was kind of didn't come out openly and say it, but I've read the written letters. He made the decision not to go any further because of, there's always the danger of getting Britain on the wrong side, and they have all the weapons and cannons, so
Yeah,
you don't want to make an enemy of Britain. And so Dubois the First didn't continue with trying to
Maintain.
influence
Mm.
to try and influence and get Samoa under Tonga's wing again. And of
Mm.
course, he was using to help Christianize the country as the excuse,
Mm.
yes.
but he
Well,
didn't.
and
Yeah,
that's very interesting because the similar situation happened with Maafu in the Lao group, where Maafu tried to reach out to Dupo the First almost for the same thing, right? Because some of
and
the
they used
yes,
Christianizing the Fijians as the excuse.
correct.
Mm.
So the
And
Tongans, I mean, the Tongans caught on to what the colonizers were doing, and that's why it was kind of hard to colonize Tonga because it's the same way of thinking, and that's another proof that Tonga was an empire. And Tonga used more soft power to keep and maintain the relationships with all the islands in the
Mm.
empire. And so when they saw what the British and French were doing, the Tongan could see right through it because that's what Tonga's have been doing for generations, for
yeah,
Mm.
thousands of years.
yeah, no, 100%. Because not only to send Maafu there for the religion, but when Fiji was being ceded back or getting going to be annexed and ceded by England, Maafu even wrote the Tupo the First and asked him, "Hey, can you say for that exact same reason, right? There
Yeah,
are Tongan chiefs with Lao group estates and relations. Could the Lao group be under Tonga Tupo the First's kind of like umbrella to
yeah,
try and see if
Mm.
he could save the Lao
yeah,
group?" But remember, Musi, we talked about this, but it was
Yep.
probably a political. It was like, hey, we could try to extend
Calculation.
and then
Eo.
risk the whole of Tonga collapsing in trying to overextend,
yeah,
and then make enemies out of the
Yep.
wrong people. All
Yep.
right, perfect. Closing that segment, we'll go into the next one here, and this one is heavily on the Tu'ikanu Kupolu perspective that was shared by, and I don't know if well, let me pull this up. If he created the video or not, but he's creating this video and kind of giving the perspective of how the Tu'ikanukupolu became so powerful and how it's evidence that Tonga originates from Ha'amoa and that whole idea there.
What's up, everybody? Yeah. But anyways, I want you guys to watch this video, and I hope you guys learn something from this. This shows the relationship between the Samoans and the Tongans, and the development of the Tu'ikanukupolu line in Tonga. So please have a listen and watch this.
By six.
I love how happy I think because he got slapped around before, he looked so happy here, and in the next video he looked so happy. Like I said, he was sitting in the bar sipping the Kool-Aid, right? My man is like ready to go.
1610, the third and most powerful line of kings emerged, the Tu'ikanukupolu.
So when the Samoans came, they found the place, found it home. So now we've got this, the beginning of the Kanakupolu.
There were people in Hahaka in the east didn't want to go and face the Hifo, people who started to, these uprisings from the Hifo. They decided to bring the Samoans to go and sort out the Wata and his Samoan
let's go a little bit
they
further.
deputized them and recruited them to the Samoan team, and they formed their own lineage.
Oh, there you go.
Hangata. So when they moved there, Korovai was one of their residents,
Okay.
but their main residence was Ahau. So that's the main residence of the Kanakupolu. And then Kanakupolu, the village of Kanakupolu named after Upolu, a flesh of Upolu, Kanakupolu.
Any initial feedback? We kind of touched a little bit on it earlier.
Yeah, let's watch a little bit more of the video before we comment.
The origin of that Tu'ikanukupolu political system, it was a Samoan political system that was established in Hifo, not even a Tongan system at all.
This Samoanization or the Matai influence in Tonga, it's very powerful the way that influenced how Tonga's shift from the Kauhala Uta, the Tuitonga line, into where we are now with the Tu'ikanukupolu line.
In order to build up political power and military power, the Tu'ikanukupolu's got to bring outside people. And so that's why there's this influx of Samoans. Thousands of Samoans
Manono
were
was
brought.
already part of that with Polu and Savai, bringing thousands of their people to mostly staying in Hifo.
The Samoans from the Tu'ikanukupolu royal line all married Tongan women. This is a small list of some of their descendants in Tonga today.
Now, we understand that the king was also bestowed with the more ancient title, Tu'ikanukupolu title. How significant is that?
Yes. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but the connection of Samoa and Tonga is through Kanakupolu, which is on the western side of Tongatapu, the main island here in Tonga. So at the moment, this king now, King Tupou VI, is installed the 24th Tu'ikanukupolu. So that's a long reign from the Tu'ikanukupolu, and it's a very exciting time because the village of Kanakupolu has been celebrating. Yesterday they've had fashion shows, they've had cultural performances.
Anyways, there you go, guys. I hope that video helped you guys learn something new about Ha'angata and the development of the Tu'ikanukupolu line in Tonga. And yeah, for your information, all the people that were speaking in that or featured in that video are Tongans. Some of them are Tongan historians who are very knowledgeable on this topic. Anyways,
Hey, Masi, what are your initial reaction? At least we're making the cut. We're making the cut on the videos.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of a saying when I was walking around Samoa, and some of the comments saying when somebody doesn't really know what they're doing or saying, we call it tamamosi. Like you're still like, it's almost like in Tongan.
Mosi.
Yeah, you're still like a mea kei kaureka, like or mea e kaureka, like kind of thing. So we call it tamamoshi in Samoa. You're not a tamamatsu, which is a much a mature person that really can speak on it. So that's to me, it's just the whole like we kind of mentioned it before. The with it's kind of even some of the position he's taking of the seeing it as a different kingdoms and powers when Maui Tegelangi really explained it clearly. It's just the roles. And if you just go by blood of rank, the Tuikan Upolu, just to name it, they are from the flesh of Upolu, means blood wise, they were not as achy as the Tui Hatagalawa or the Tui Tonga. So, they're going to just do the hard working, the one that makes you sweat, because Akis don't sweat and they're doing the political affairs, which is a lot of the hard work of the daily affairs of managing the people, right? While the Tuitonga is we would say like the gatekeeper of the ancient religion, and then the Tui Hatagalawa, like what Maui Tigelangi, shared, which makes sense, was the what is it, Homeland Security position of managing the immigration that's coming in and out to the Pacific or the Polynesian nation, and managing, especially with the whole of the you know, islands coming when for the Polo Polo and the what is it, Polo Polo and the Inasi. So to me, it's such a Palangi point of view saying that usurped Tuikang Polo usurped and took over and did all of this while that was not the case. It's just every of those blood wise that was the lowest of the rank, but the duty and roles all function together as a whole as running the Polynesian empire under the Tuitonga. So to me, once you get that concept, then it's much easier to explain and understand the Polynesian or the history of the ancient times of how it was run, because it's very very Palangi view of how it was run kind of thing. So that's just my spill there.
All right, Maui.
Yeah, I mean, everything that he said is nothing new, but you kind of have to understand that all the Samoans, they're called Samoans because they lived in Samoa for like about 300 years, but they were Tongans that went there under the Tuitonga and to serve the Tuitonga while he was there. And then when the Tuitonga came back, he brought some of them back. And so it's funny. One of the navigator of Amma,
Mm.
um, his Samoan name is La'au Ma'alava, but his Tongan name is Akawola. And some years ago, I was at a Faikava having a kava session with Akawola, who has a title and estate in Vava'u, and he was the governor of Vava'u at the time. And he was telling me, Daniel, I have something that we've talked about in our family over the many generations is how we followed the Tuitonga to Samoa, and they called us Tongans in Samoa. We weren't considered native. And then hundreds of years later, we came back to Tonga, and the people in Tonga didn't
Call him
call us Tongan,
Samoan.
even though we came from it. They called us Samoan. But we came because at the bidding of the king to
The
come back
Tuitonga.
to Tonga, yeah,
Mm.
to serve him. And so we started in Tonga as Tongans, went to Samoa for a couple hundred years. They called us Tongans over there. We were never accepted as Samoans, even though we intermarried and became family. Then we moved back to Tonga at the bidding of the king, and now we're back in Tonga, and we're not considered Tongans. We're still considered Samoans.
All while just to fulfill our duty and responsibility.
and all we were doing was just doing what we were told and expected to do, and doing it well, doing our duty well. And so, I mean, that's what is kind of getting lost in translation, is that we're not getting the full picture and the historical context of where this all happens. And part of it is political. It would be hard for to establish the Tu'ikanukupolu if the Tongans thought that our king is going to be lower or of equal rank to the new king. So how do you make the new king, the third line of kings, get established but lower rank? You say he's a king from Samoa with Samoan blood, and that lowers his rank. So he's acceptable for Tongans to be the third line of kings. When you think of it that way, it makes so much more sense now. Why he was called that? It wasn't, but the interpretation that the Europeans and also what modern Samoans think of, because we live in a context and in a post-colonized world where the Pacific was all divided up, and so the traditional context of how the Polynesian um, islands viewed themselves is kind of, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And so even though they were Tongans, but it was political also at the time of why they were called that. It was because it would be a more political, taste wise, it would be easier to swallow than saying it's another third Tongan line of kings.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like I said, that's why it's always when you go back in history, zooming out to 10 to 20,000 feet and looking at holistically doesn't always solve every issue, but it gives you a better perspective in seeing these things happen. Some of the things that were portrayed there that I find were interesting is, because a lot of those things were Tongan content, right? Like that video, I think that's a BYU Hawaii video in the very beginning, where it states
it is
that the third Tu'ikanukupolu, the most powerful. Now, what does that mean, right? Like when we look at it in the world that we grow up in now.
Like to go along with what you're saying, it's because that's the interpretation that has come by the shallow historians of Tongan history. They think it's the most powerful. But what is power? And that's the very interesting thing, is the Tu'itonga and Tu'ihatakalaua concept of power was different than the Tu'ikanukupolu concept of power. And the Tu'ikanukupolu concept of power was what you would expect, and it's considered a more Samoan perspective of power. The Tongan perspective of power is not actually who has the title and who can force someone, but the Tongan idea of power is who can influence. Influence is greater power, because not only are you able to accomplish what you want to get done, but you maintain the peace. The Samoan concept of power is more by who has the muscle, who has the most money, who has the, you know what I mean? But the more finer aspects of power, like soft power, is the Tu'itonga and Tu'ihatakalaua philosophy of the best way to handle situations, even political situations.
No, and that's what's interesting is the perception of Tongan power as it stands from a lot of our brothers and sisters on the outer islands is the opposite of what you just expressed, which I agree with what you're saying. But the Tongan perception, or the perception of Tongan power, is invasion. It is military force. It is all those things. I really like what Jake Fitzemanu described Tongan power. And the way he described it was Tongan diplomacy. That's the way he described it.
Yeah,
and
see,
so
because I think you had Jake on Fitise Manu on twice. I only saw one. I didn't see the one where he mentions that diplomacy. But I
No,
think
we
that's what.
only had him once. You may have missed it, but that's one of the things it was when he was describing Samoa brought the fine mat and Fiji brought the kind of saying everybody contribute to the Polynesian Empire, and he said, and Tonga brought diplomacy, their mastery of diplomacy to the table. Because to me, I agree with what you said. I actually, when you look at the concept of power, this is why I really believe that Tonga survived, apart from the religious aspect, God's influence, 100%. But what Tonga brought to the table was thousands of years of maturity that England did not have as an empire. In the grand scheme of things, England was like the United States. They're going through the we have a surprise joiner here. Oh, didn't know we were gonna have a guest join us here. So welcome, casual observer. Appreciate it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome.
I can't hear him.
You can or can't?
Best
I can't.
podcast.
Can you? Oh, there we go. I hear him now.
Okay.
Best podcast so far, guys. It was a good one.
So yeah. So I mean, what I was gonna say is that was one of the biggest advantages, and this is one of the things that doing the podcast has really educated me, as we've observed. This is what Laufiti Tonga really gave to Tupou the First, in my opinion. It was that fact. Tupou the First had already shown military power, right? Administrative structure. And I really feel that this was the missing piece that Laufiti Tonga gave to Tupou the First, was this concept of soft power and influence, because you weren't going to beat England in military power, right? You weren't going to beat them in all these things that England was superior in. The one thing was to recognize where is the one area that Tonga has superiority on, and it is mature understanding of power and influence.
It's diplomacy. And that's the only, and I think that's something that you only learn when you have the long history and heritage. It's the intricacies and how delicate politics can be, and to learn those things, it's not something that you can learn quickly. It takes years and generations to kind of understand and develop those kind of traditions and cultures and understanding that helps keep in contact extended families that cover multiple islands over millions of square miles. And so the using force and military forces is a very weak
it's a short-term play.
It's a short-term fix. But even though Tongans were known warriors, but Tongans never used that as the first option. Tongans are known as warriors, and some of the things that Tongans have done throughout the Pacific is well known. But that was always the last resort.
Yeah, it's not feasible long term.
Yes.
So now that we have casual observer, sounds like you've been listening in. What are your observations or any commentary before we continue?
It's just kind of going back to the situation with like La Fai and kind of the problems that came to Samoa after they were quote unquote granted their independence. You can see, maybe a much closer and more recent place to observe where things kind of went not as smoothly as they would have liked is Hawaii. And it was kind of interesting to watch Chief of War. And, one of the most important parts there that I was waiting to see in Chief of War was with the actual Civil War starts over a kava ceremony. right? And we know that the
Yeah,
center
they
of
don't
power,
show they actually don't show that
they
in
don't
Chief of War.
they
And
don't show that.
I think it's because the background history of how important kava is as a symbol of power and how to translate that on screen is difficult.
Well, I don't think they understand that in Hawaii, because when you try and search out the what does kava mean in Hawaii, they don't know. They know it's extremely important, but they don't know how, and they don't know why, and they don't understand how the government was centered around the kava
The kava.
symbol.
Oh, what?
And
Oh, so what you're saying is you mean the current Hawaiian historians and people who understand Hawaiian culture, they don't understand the
they
significance of the kava. That's why they overlooked it.
Yes, and this is probably one of the biggest problems that they face in Hawaii, right? Hawaii is the 50th state of the most powerful country the planet has ever seen, right?
Yeah.
Do they want to look to these small little islands in the Pacific to see where their roots and heritage come from? Right? Do they really want to? It kind of seems to me there seems to be a strong lack of humility, because if they look, they would find it, but they don't want to look.
Well.
Same here in New Zealand.
There's also the aspect of being the 50th state of a superpower. It gets overshadowed by the current prestige and wealth of being the only superpower on the planet.
And
So,
you can see, but it's interesting to watch the same problems that Samoa had when Lafai and Samoa was given their independence are the same problems that Kamehameha runs into.
Yes.
In trying to unify the kingdom, and he runs into the same problems of what you discover when force becomes the primary weapon that you use to unify people.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and it was the same. It's almost like they live this thing over and over and over. But there are other instances in Hawaiian history where this kind of goes back to Paao and Pili, and whether were they invaders, were they people there who were trying to restore the proper form of religious priestly powers and the proper form of government, because when they arrive in Hawaii, it's almost like the ambassador gets sent out and they find the place just a total wreck. So he goes and brings back Pili to bring some sort of order to the chaos that's kind of unfolding in the islands. And that's where the sweetness and the bitterness of leadership and power is something that a lot of people just tend to, well, they don't understand, because how many people actually wield real power, right? And they, from what you see and what goes on behind the scenes, are two. It's like the Wizard of Oz, right? And the wizard behind the curtain maneuvering the levers. So I mean, that's just kind of it's just kind of my observations with all of this is that people don't understand that when you're asking someone to use force, especially in the Pacific, when you're dealing with much smaller communities, you're saying, kill my nephews, kill my relatives on that side of the island. Just because you may not necessarily have a direct connection to them, you're telling me to do something that I find very, very difficult to do, because that's my family.
No, and that's what a lot of people who casually, I mean, talk about what happened between Tonga and Samoa as, oh, it was a war against Tonga and Samoa and Tonga enslaved Samoa. That wasn't the case. A lot of the times it was like family dispute. And Tonga easily, I mean, let's be more truthful about what happened between Talakai Faiki and what happened in Samoa. Talakai Faiki could have easily come to Tonga and all his relatives and the rest of the islands of Polynesia and raised an army and totally destroyed
liberated
half
them.
of the island.
Absolutely.
And wiped out who? His mom's family? That's what you
No,
want him to
that's
do?
exactly what I'm saying. that's why people. That's why casual people or casual historians or people who love to listen to Polynesian podcasts and history or whatever videos, they don't understand the actual situation is they're related to half of those people. They don't want to kill them, even though if it came down to a question of just military might, it could have easily be done in a snap. And so that's and so painting the context, and I think that's what's important about the podcast today, is that we need to get the context of what was happening at that day. That's why I mentioned how a lot of the people who were in this skirmish were relatives of the Tuitonga, were cousins, were nephews, were uncles. It was kind of like a little family skirmish. It wasn't a war. It wasn't war like everyone says it was. And so, I mean, there's a lot more context and nuance that needs to be understood. And a lot of times, war and conflicts that happened in Polynesian history gets too much of a Western point of view that it's not the exact truth.
You know who I feel bad for? All those people that came over to Hihifo, right? They live their lives in Samoa and they get told they're Tongan the whole time. And then they show up in Tonga and then everybody in Tonga says you're Samoan. You know? And
I know.
Right? They've been in Samoa for generations and generations. Their whole life, we're Tongan. They finally get to Tonga and they say you're Samoan. It's like those are the people that got the short end of the stick in that deal.
Well, and the thing is this is why we say not all oral histories are created equal. And many times oral histories are just perspectives of one side of the family. Some people's oral history.
I'm just saying, I'm concerned the podcast is driving Thomas to drink. You just emptied that bottle.
It's the bottle of water that I use from the Hobbiton. People, you know, what's New Zealand famous for?
and this is why, you know, as we have these conversations with people all throughout Polynesia and looking at some of the history, that's one of the things that becomes very, very clear. Oh, we got a new paid member that just made a comment, so Eddie, appreciate it. Eddie is a paid member on the channel, and he says in Mariner's book, they had a day where the relatives eat and say goodbye. Then the next day they fought. No, that's true, right? And Mariner and those guys got in trouble because they disturbed the peace and they cut the little family reunion short because because of that disturbance. But this is where not all oral histories are created equal, and this is where family lines that have a longer historical context would give the proper context to say, these are not Samoans coming back to Tonga. These are Tongans. And when they were in Samoa, they would say, they're not Tongans. They are Samoans. When they're in Samoa, they are Samoans. When they're in Tonga, they are Tongans, because it's all the same family. It's all the extended group of people.
Yeah. But when you understand that context, I wonder if Samoans would still consider them Samoan because they're actually Tongans. It's like you can't have it both ways.
No.
You know? It's like, why do you claim that they're Samoan when they came back to Tonga? When they lived in Samoa, you called them Tongans. And when they move back to Tonga and they create the Tu'ikanukupolu line, then all of a sudden you're saying they're Samoan again.
Yeah, but we see that all the time, right? When someone wants to claim somebody, you know, somebody gets drafted number 1 in the NFL or whatever, then everybody starts,
he's my cousin. He's my cousin. He's my uncle.
A person who faced that was Fiji, right? Like Fiji had all kinds of pushback on him when he used the name
initially.
Fiji. And then when he became like this huge success, then suddenly, he's Fiji.
Everyone claimed him.
Yeah.
Not 100%, and that's another thing I want to that's why I don't like to run through the whole video, because then we don't get to respond to every the other thing that is important to recognize here is we had Dr. Shoot, what's his name? Eliu on there. And he
Chelsea,
gave the
Eliu.
Chelsea Eliu, right? For all those who wanted PhDs, there's another PhD you can throw in there. He was been on the program. He gave the observation that it was a Matai system that the Tu'ikanukupolu was on, and because there was a form of council and voting at the time, and wasn't until having more conversations with Maui Tekelangi that, and it makes sense, the historical, the family generation said initially it was father to son, and somewhere along the line, it disintegrated from that. But Maui, can you give the context of how that happened and why it has the perception? Like you said, if you don't have the full context and perspective in the build up to it, it's easy to make that assumption, a fair assumption. It's like it looks like a Matai system because they're sitting there and selecting Tu'ikanukupolus, and it's not father to son, father to son. Is there any context you can give there, Maui, to kind of give some clarity to that?
Yeah, so the Tu'ikanukupolu line is interesting, is that it started out, going from father to son. And then it got to a time where they were in the middle period where it was voted upon by the main chiefs of the family. And I think that happened when because the Tu'ikanukupolu was getting weak to the point where they couldn't fulfill their duties, and then the chiefs of the family had more of a say, because it was almost like the chiefs, because the Tu'ikanukupolu had a number of sons that were given titles and given responsibilities, and then when the main line couldn't carry out the responsibilities, and some of the other titled chiefs from the Tu'ikanukupolu family they felt they're carrying more than they should, then it became voted on. And I think because all the kings had multiple wives, and so it became accepted also because of the fact that they were called the Tu'ikanukupolu. So somehow it got in there that we can use the Samoan way and rename someone else, even though it's not according to Tongan patriarchy. But because we're partly Samoan, we can use the Matai system if needs be. And so there were a couple of generations in the Tu'ikanukupolu where it shifted around between brothers, but eventually it got back to father to son.
Well, that's also, I mean, if you look at the creation of that Kanukupolu line, it becomes a pretty brilliant move as well, because this is the guy who's got to make it rain, right? He's got to bring home the bacon, because everybody else he's the doer guy.
Yeah, he's the one who has to make sure the whole kingdom is properly cultivated.
Right, and that's the backbone. If you can't feed your people, you got no people. And so it becomes a matter of just from the outside looking in, it becomes a matter of practical application of that system. Because if you got a guy that isn't doing his job, you have to get somebody who can do the job, because just a lot is riding on it.
No, and just to add on too, isn't there been multiple times that the Tui Tonga heir or the Tui Hatagalawa heir had to go and fulfill the role because they couldn't decide, or it was getting to the point that no one was willing to do the Tui Kanukupolu job because it was getting in disarray until they find the next holder? I mean, is that correct, Maui Tegelangi?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
So it's always been
I thought they said that Muliki Ha'amea at one time held the Tu'ikanukupolu line.
That was because he was being elevated to become the Tui Hatagalawa, because there was a vacancy in the Tui Hatagalawa. There was a Ulutefua in 2 generations of the Tui Hatagalawa line. Ulutefua means only child. So there was an only child for the Tui Hatagalawa for 2 generations. And so by the time Siri Waka Ifanga passed, there were multiple candidates to become the Tu'i Hatakalaua. Then when it was agreed that Maeliwaki would become the next Tu'i Hatakalaua, he was made Tu'i Kanukupolu for 2 years to elevate him slowly up
to that position
to become the Tu'i Hatakalaua. So he became Tu'i Kanukupolu for 2 years. After that 2 years, he was made Tu'i Hatakalaua, and his son Muriki Ha'amea was made Tu'i Kanukupolu. And then when Maeliwaki passed away, Muriki Ha'amea became the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and then there was a vacancy for the Tu'i Kanukupolu.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I have to correct you because the Samoans came into Hihifo and they formed their own line and overpowered and usurped. So it doesn't make sense that the Tu'i Kanukupolu would eventually be the Tu'i Hatakalaua if they usurped the Tu'i
No, but
Hatakalaua.
see, and that's you pointed out exactly. See, the Samoans don't understand that in the Tongan part of history, the 3 line of kings weren't separate kingdoms. It was one kingdom with 3 kings who had different responsibilities and different levels. The Tu'i Tonga is at the top, the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and then the lowest king is Tu'i Kanukupolu. And so when there was a vacancy, there was no heir for 2 generations, Ulutefua for 2 generations, and the Tu'i Hatakalaua. When they went back to see who would be the next Tu'i Hatakalaua, of course, they thought the Tu'i Kanukupolu line would be the most appropriate. And so he didn't have the Tu'i Kanukupolu title at the time, so they made him Tu'i Kanukupolu for 2 years to help elevate him to become Tu'i Hatakalaua. And then Maeliwaki's son Muriki Ha'amea was made Tu'i Kanukupolu. See, and that proves my point that there were levels to the kingship and they were all related. And so they were more like kings on a scale of rank. It wasn't independent kingdoms. It was 3 kings with different roles within the same kingdom.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, these are responsibilities. I think responsibilities are a better term. And then instead of independence for Samoa, it's more of higher level of autonomy. Because it's not really that they were 100% independent, but they were given a higher level of autonomy, and being kind of severed there. So that's the other thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in the video that needed some clarification. So those are, to me, were the big parts that that needed to be addressed.
Things on that clarification, Maui. Because I just didn't, because what Tua was saying, because it seems like they were taking on that role to fulfill it, but now I know it was just like what you said, it's an elevation to go higher.
Yeah, and this is kind of a good segue into the last video for the evening, because the significance of understanding the elevation of power, right? That it's building up power or roles too quickly is destructive, right? And it's shown that these things are built over time, understanding soft power. And let's come back to this video here. I've never had it with 4 people on. We'll see how this layout looks. Oh, yeah, it fits everybody. Oh,
nice.
Let me do this. Let me just maybe move this here. All right, that's a little bit better. Okay. Let's I need to share this one, I think. Is this which one is this? Yes.
Is this our Uso again?
All of them is Story of Bo.
Oh, sure.
Like I said, this last week, I think he's feeling the pressure. He's felt the pressure.
You guys making him too popular.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing on some of his comments, because people were calling him out like, dude, because it's when we say we invited him in the comments on TikTok, right? This is not me saying like, oh, we DM'd him and this needs to be verified. It's in the comments of TikTok when he first did his Ufi pits. That's why a lot of our regulars, the moment they see Story of Bo, the first thing that comes up is Ufi Pits, right? That's the first thing. Oh, it's Ufi Pits, right? And so we had fun with Ufi Pits. Then we gave him a nickname on the last reaction Mr. Aotearoa and I did, and that was The Story of Who. That was actually the title of that episode we just released last week. And I think he's just getting frustrated. And what's our brother from the Offside show, Masi? Sopoanga? No, that's the
no. Sapolu, Elliot. Eliota.
So Eliota, he made some comments, and one of the things that he gave us a compliment. He's like, "Man, I really appreciate your guys' like diligence in the content, right?" And as everybody who follows the podcast, we do not have a content issue. In fact, we have too much content. We didn't do a live last week, I think, or the week before, and we still have about 22 episodes to release. Right? So Masi could do another world tour, and I could be busy again for another 30 weeks, and we'd still have episode to release every week.
Maybe it's a good time for me to do my diet journey for a whole year to us, because we have so much content. I don't have to come on and create a new content. We have so much content.
I support that one.
I'll come back. The viewers won't even recognize Mr. Aotearoa because I've changed my body transformation the next time I do a live.
Oh, Yahweh. So this is the closing video, and it actually, I'm glad we did it in this order because we were kind of debating before we went on live. But the way the conversation has gone, it's all built up because we talked about Kava, we've talked about the Tu'ikanu'upolu, we've talked about the Tu'itonga, we've talked about the significance of looking at things at a empire level perspective and not zooming in to geographic locations. It can make things really blurry, and it's a perfect setup for this video. Like I said, like this is another one of his videos that he's created, and honestly was busy the last week and a half, and I thought it was just one video, and then people are like, well, what about his other video? And I was like, what video? And then when I comment on his other video, we're finding out this guy is just he's excited to respond to our videos, which is good. This is good. This is how ideas compete. This is how you have conversations. Ideally, it would have been nice on a episode, but not everybody's comfortable with the episode format, Yeah. So we'll go from here. Let's go back to this. So this is his response to one of our short videos that we've released online. When did the Tu'itonga get defeated and the Tu'ikanu'upolu got that power that it has now? I would love anybody to tell me that, because it didn't happen. It goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Laufiri Tonga gifted this to Tupou the first.
Talovalava, what's up, everybody? So the Uso here asked for anybody to come up and show you every day that Laufiri Tonga was defeated by Tu'ikanu'upolu or by Taupa'ahau. So here I am to answer that call. So let me ask you a few questions. Brother Tevita, what is the Tau o Velata, or the War of Velata? That's the first question. Second question is, what is Matuku a Etau? What is that peace agreement that was reached by Taupa'ahau and Laufili Tonga and others? So you claim that Laufili Tonga or the Tu'itonga was never defeated by the Tu'ikanu'upolu. Yes, he was defeated in the Battle of Velata, or the War of Velata. That was done in 1826. You claim that there was no war, but this particular battle, or the Battle of Velata, is also known in Tonga as the Tawakipulu, which means the war that was fought with bullets. If you claim that there was no battle, there was never a battle between Tu'ikanu'upolu and Laufili Tonga, then you are discrediting the efforts of Puakatau of Eua, chief of Eua, that fought against Laufili Tonga. And you are taking away the title that was bestowed by Taupa'ahau on Motunu for his bravery and his efforts, the title Tu'uhe Toka. But let's move to the peace settlement at Matukua Etau, the peace settlement that was reached between the Tui Ha'ateo, Laufilio Tonga, and Taufa'ahau. See, the main characters in this peace settlement of Matukua Tau is Taufa'ahau, Toke Moana, Tui Tonga Laufilio Tonga, and Tui Ha'ateo Afio Folaha. So, what actions was taken at this peace agreement at Matukua Etau? The first action that was done by Taufa'au was to take the wife of Tuitonga Laufilio Tonga, that was Lupe Pa'au, or let's just say Lupe, to be his own wife. This was very significant as this signifies the removal of the sanctity and the sacredness of Laufilio Tonga. Secondly, Taufa'au took his sister, Hala Evalu, from Tui Ha'ateo and gave her to Laufilio Tonga and made her Laufilio Tonga's wife. Doing this to Laufilio Tonga, it's very significant as this severed the divine status of the Tui Tonga that was given to Laufilio Tonga by giving his own sister to be married to Laufilio Tonga. And this in turn also weakens the power of the Tuia Ateo or its influence by severing these familial ties to the line and also empowering the line of the Tuikano Kupolu by attaching his sister to the line of the Tuitonga by marrying her off to Laufilio Tonga. These actions by Taufa'au were not only culturally motivated, but it was also politically motivated, as this is when Tonga's rulership moved away from its traditional line of rulers, where the Tui Tonga was a divine being in Tonga, and became a centralized power into the line of the Tuikano Kupolu and Taufa'au, later known as Tupo. So what happened when after the Taufa'au and the Tuikano Kupolu line gained full rulership of Tonga? Laufilio Tonga was exiled to Tongapu. Tui Ha'ateo was sent to live at live in Tungua, and Toke Moana, who was sent away from Lifuka, and he was sent to live in Foa. And the people of Velata and Tongoleleka was removed and placed in Uholeba to farm and keep the land. Anyways, to keep this long story short, your point was you said that this was freely gifted by Laufilio Tonga to Taufa'au. Now tell me if those actions that I have mentioned by taking away his wife and all this like the treaty, tell me those things did not happen. Tell me that they did not exist. If you prove to me that none of those happened, then I will concede and I will say that you were right and we are wrong. But you said if you look at the actions that was done by Taufa'au, those are not the actions of somebody that was freely giving something to Taufa'au. That was a very loud statement by the Tuikano Kupolu. But anyways, you asked for somebody to come and answer your question. So, and I hope that I did that for you and for your viewers and for my friends as well. But anyways, have a great week ahead and stay blessed too.
When did a Tui?
There's like he has no idea what he's talking about.
Let's start with Velata. Let's start with Velata.
And I like how he said we. So he's the mouthpiece of someone who doesn't have the gut to put their face on the screen.
Let me maybe go ahead. Maybe I'll pull up the comment so you can see. But go ahead.
No, and it's quite easy to dispute that both. He said 1826 is when the wars in Velata happened, and the wars that happened in Velata were not really against Laufili Tonga. At the time, Laufili Tonga was not the Tui Tonga, and at the time, Taufa'au was not the Tuikano Kupolu. Taufa'ahau became Tu'ikanukupolu in 1845. Laufilitonga became Tu'ikanukupolu, I believe, in 1836.
Tuitonga.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, Tu'itonga. So this war was actually between Toke Moana and Taufa'ahau. Taufa'ahau being Taufa'ahau's mother being from the same clan as Toke Moana. Toke Moana, he should have respected Toke Moana more than he paid obeisance as from the same clan, the head clan of the Ha'ulakimata, which is the head clan that Toke Moana. And it's so funny, he says that Toke Moana got removed to Foa. Toke Moana got killed in the Velata Wars. And that's why the Velata Wars ended. When Toke Moana was killed in the wars ended. And here's a proof that Taufa'ahau did not beat Laufilitonga. Because Laufilitonga had the support of all of Tonga. Laufilitonga had warriors from all over Tongatapu, half of Ha'apai, all of Ava'u, and Niua. And Laufilitonga's total number of warriors was 3 times greater than Tupo the First. Tupo the First only had half of Ha'apai. But Toke Moana is a close blood relative of Laufilitonga. And Toke Moana sent for Laufilitonga, and Toke Moana was the one who rallied all the support, and he brought Laufilitonga to Ha'apai because he knew he would get the support of all the other warriors from all the other Tongan islands.
Through
And Toke
Laufilitonga.
Moana did it because Toke Moana just wanted to get rid of Taufa'ahau. It was their own little personal war. And so when Laufilitonga came, Laufilitonga is also closely related to Taufa'ahau.
Yes.
And so when they were getting prepared to do the battle, and this is what I mean, the difference of the Tu'itonga and Tu'ihatakalaua way of thinking. Toke Moana just wanted to smash him. We have the numbers, let's just go erase these guys off of the face of the earth. Laufilitonga says, no, that's below my standard. I'm going to be the next Tu'itonga, and so I have to do it the Tu'itonga way.
Doesn't live up to what he's preparing to be.
Yes, I'm going to be the next Tu'itonga, and I have to do it and I have to fight war that's fit for a king that I've been raised to be, a chiefly way. He called it, and Laufilitonga said, this is the chiefly way to do war. And he divided his army into 3 parts to be the same size as Taufa'ahau's army. That's the chiefly way to do battle.
Make it equal.
Make it equal. You don't use
mano a mano.
You don't use your 3 times size battle and destroy the other guy. That's not kingly. I'm a real chief, and I'm going to be the next king and head of the empire. So he told Toke Moana, which Toke Moana was mad, but he's not going to go against the future Tu'itonga. So Laufilitonga divides the army in 3, and he says, 1 will stay inside the fort, the 2nd will stand behind the fort and in front of the fort to guard the 2 main gateways, and only the 3rd group will attack. That's the chiefly way of fighting. We're not just going to destroy him and run him off. That'll be unkingly of me to just run off some upstart chief.
Who's his close relative, like you said.
Who is also his close relative. And so after a few skirmishes and after a few weeks, Taufa'ahau realized that there's no way he's going to win, because after the skirmishes this week,
next week,
the next week, they rotated. Those guys who were on the attack came into the inside the fort, the guys who were inside the fort will go on the outside and protect the front and the back where the main entrances are. And the guys who were protecting the entrances, it was their turn to attack. So after a couple weeks of that, Taufa'ahau was losing men, and he was losing men at a higher rate because these guys are fresh every time. So after a while, he's like, I can't win. He realizes it's impossible to win.
So it's almost like Laufili Tonga was buying him time to try and figure out a solution.
And that's exactly what happened. It gave, see, and this is the beauty of the Tongan way of influence. It was buying time for him to figure out and think. And then Taufa'ahau's like, what really is this problem? Why are they fighting this war? And then he realizes it's just Tokemoana. So Taufa'ahau put spies out, and over the weeks, he learned what Tokemoana's routine was, and then realized when he participated in the battle, when he didn't. And then in one of the skirmishes, Tokemoana gets killed. And
So
then
he knows if I kill Tokemoana, the battle's going to go away. The
yes,
fight will go away.
so he kills Tokemoana in one of the skirmishes, and then he pulls his troops back. And then that's when he sends his men to Laufili Tonga and say, I give in. So even though Taufa'ahau would become a future Tu'ikanukupolu, first of all, he was not the Tu'ikanukupolu. Second of all, his war wasn't with Laufili Tonga, it was with Tokemoana. And it is true, Lupe Pau'u was already betrothed to to Laufili Tonga, and she was on her way from Vava'u to Tongatapu, and she was staying with Tokemoana in Hihifo Ha'apai when Taufa'ahau stole her away. So it was more a slap on the face of Tokemoana than it was, because even though the chief or granddaughter of that's going to be betrothed to the queen or to a future king, that relationship is not really a true relationship until not only are they married but they have a child. All the relationships to the king, when you marry to the kingly line, even if you're married, that still doesn't mean the relationship exists. Only when you have a child,
consummated. Yeah.
when there's offspring, then the relationship is called, then you get to be called a queen or have the rank and respect. And so, I mean, the fact that Taufa'ahau ran away with Lupe Pau'u really wasn't a affront to Laufili Tonga, as it was a slap on the face to Tokemoana, because he's supposed to be taking care of her. Yeah, and that kind of added on to, because Taufa'ahau and his men had already had a couple of skirmishes with Tokemoana's men. Some famous stories that happened before that. And so the wars at Velata was not so much the war against Tu'ikanukupolu against Tu'itonga. No.
They weren't even
They didn't have
either
the
of those.
titles.
They didn't even have the titles, and they weren't even.
And this is what's actually coming to mind. And this is why I said it's almost like, without even trying, the sequencing of these videos are perfect. It seems to be Laufili Tonga had already made his decision, but he wasn't going to come out and say, because really what happened was Taufa'ahau interpreted or finally understood the message Laufili Tonga was trying to send to Taufa'ahau.
No, I think Taufa'ahau. Yeah, I think Laufili Tonga didn't want to choose sides in a way, but he knew he could manage this conflict between Tokemoana and Taufa'ahau by being there and making sure so making sure that not too much damage was done to either side. And so he was kind of managing a quarrel amongst two of his close relatives.
Okay, so maybe let me rephrase it. He said, whoever figures out the puzzle first deserves to win. And the puzzle was, you guys got to finish one or the other.
I don't think it was exactly that. I think Laufilitonga was actually hoping for something where
They both just got over it.
they both just got over it, but unfortunately it didn't, and one of them had to pay with his life, but that's what happened. And so, see, and this is the other thing, the other proof. What happened about Taufa Hau's older sister marrying Laufilitonga, they were already betrothed already. That happened a generation ago. That was with Vuki, and when Tupotoa was the Tu'ikanukupolu, and his daughter is already gonna be married because that was the practice. The daughter of the Tu'ikanukupolu married into the Tu'itonga line and provided the heir for the next Tu'itonga. And so Mata'aho was probably like about 15 or 16 years older than Taufa'ahau. And all that played out when Taufa'ahau was like maybe 5 years old. What
Trying to
happened
survive his sickness.
Yeah, when Taufa'ahau was still young before he went back to Ha'apai. So all that played out with his older sister and had nothing to do with the Velata Wars. But it did, there were old bitter rivalries because of what happened with his older sister that kind of trickled down and was playing out again in the Velata Wars.
Mm.
And so it's funny, and this is the proof, this is the final proof that Taufa'ahau did not win the wars, even though the interpretation from the Wesleyan missionaries
It's
said
propaganda.
it is propaganda. The Wesleyan missionaries had said that Taufa'ahau won the Velata Wars, but like they weren't there. but what happened was Taufa'ahau provided the ngāue for the Taumafakawa to have that famous
Transition.
Taumafakawa as a symbol of his giving in to Laufilitonga at the war, because his war wasn't with Laufilitonga in the first place. And so
Tokemwana.
it was with Tokemwana. And so when Taufa'ahau presented all the prepared ngāue and all the, including the pigs, the food and the kava and everything, he prepared the pigs for the first time with wrapped feet and wrapped mouths for all the pigs that were there. And it meant that his hands and feet, all 4 feet, were wrapped in banana leaves and mouth, that he would not do any work or even speak. That's why when you do a traditional Tonga presentation of the pigs, traditionally, all the feet are wrapped in banana leaves and the mouth is wrapped in banana leaves, saying he will never do any work against the Tu'itonga, even his mouth will not speak any
Ill
evil
will or anything.
any evil or ill will against Laufilitonga ever. And so that's the first time that was ever done, to wrap the feet. So in Tonga, the time where the pig was not presented on its feet but on its back was when Talakai Faiki got pushed out of Samoa. So when Talakai Faiki came back to Tonga, because it was an ambush, because they put the clubs under the feet of the pig. And so when they went back to Tonga, they changed the protocol where the pig is on its back, so you don't have anywhere to put the
and then
clubs
you lift
under.
it up when you count it.
And then part of the protocol is you lift up the head of the pig so they can check that there's nothing under, like what happened in Samoa. And so Tupo the First took it a step further and tied all the pig's feet and the pig's snout with the banana leaves, to say that his hands and feet will never do any ill work against the Tu'itonga, and even the snout of the pig was wrapped. He will never speak evil of or anything negative against Laufudi Tonga, and that practice is still done to up to today. And that is proof that Taufahau did not beat Laufudi Tonga. That's proof that Taufahau did not beat any Tui Tonga.
Yes.
And what happened? The gift of Taufahau giving a now whakakauhala uta koe kia Taufahau, that happened like 40 years later in like 1861 or 62, I believe.
Yeah. No, and that to me is what's fascinating about this is this is where that mature level of understanding the dynamics of power, because without the thousands of years of history and experience, the temptation is when you have two of lords, right? That you're because it's happened in England all the time.
No, that's the thing. You can see how kings would manage battles and wars between various barons, various members of nobility that they had to rule over. I'm still king over both of them. Both of them do not challenge, the sovereignty of the monarch. But you still have to figure out how both, because if you look at both sides and say, oh, both sides have a legitimate claim, I can't really take a side. It's not. It isn't just. You pick a dog in a fight and then you go and kill the other party. But maybe some of those nuances. It's kind of, maybe some.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, and to further push this forward, when Ulkalala with William Mariner, when he first comes in and he blows the living lights out of the first Kolotawa Tongatapu, Ulkalala says, "Stop." Right? He says, "Stop this," because he gives the exact, relatively similar reasoning to William Mariner. He's like, when he sees the destruction and how relatively easy it was for him, he did not find any level of glory in that. Right? Like Ulkalala walks off, and William Mariner documents that. He's like, "Yeah, this is not what winning over it looks like," right? And I think a lot of it is because it's just too destructive. If you destroy everything, what are you going to rule over? Just chaos and destruction?
Ashes, rule over ashes.
Yeah.
Doesn't Taufahau like completely avoid just like Lapaha and everything because he's not? That's part of his demonstration that I'm not at war with Laufudi Tonga.
Yeah. All the chiefs. The same the same thing that happened in Tonga is the same thing that happened with the emperor in Japan. All the warring chiefs fought amongst each other, but the emperor
was above it all. Yeah, he was above it all.
Okay.
It's just like back in World War One, right? Everyone that was fighting each other in World War One, they were all first cousins. They were all the grandchildren of Queen Victoria.
Yes, they were.
Right? So what? So Queen Victoria is supposed to like choose one of her grandkids and kill the other grandkid or something? That's what people don't understand.
It's actually, they say that was one of the reasons why she died earlier than they should have. She was so distraught.
Heartbroken.
Yeah,
with
her
what was
grandkids,
happening
the
with her
family.
grandkids. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, and this is why, this is why it's important to have these conversations, because if not, this type of chaos is only going to lead to problems later on. And trying to understand these things are important. So going into the Matuka Etau, or whatever what's the specific term for that, Danny?
Yeah, Matuka Etau.
Yeah, Matuka Etau. What's behind that? Where does that fit in the timeline? And what was the purpose behind that?
That kava ceremony where he presented the
same
plates
one?
with the tide happened on that piece of land. And that's what settled the war. The Velata Wars was when Tupo the First gave in and presented the kava, and they had the kava ceremony to establish peace no more to the end of the war. And that kava ceremony happened at Matuku Aitau. And What's funny, guys, about Taufa'au giving in? Then Laufili Tonga went back to Tongatapu with his Tongatapu warriors. The Vava'u warriors went back to Vava'u. The Niua warriors went back to
Niua.
Niua. And then Taufa'au, when everyone got back, he didn't disband his army. He marked all the men that were extra violent against him and his people, and he went around and whipped the rest of Ha'apai.
Became the Tui Ha'apai.
Yeah. He became the Tui Ha'apai later, but he first whipped them as payback.
Revenge is very hard to get over.
Yeah, he said, you noticed the pig hooves and the mouth was just for the Tui Tonga.
Just for Taufa'au. It wasn't for the rest of you guys.
Yeah. I was gonna say Taufa'au can only tolerate one. He's already using all his patience for the Tui Tonga. The rest is gonna get the Kai Vevela.
You see, and this is, I think this is another very relevant point to all of this, is that you see a lot of mistakes that were made in other Pacific Island nations when it came to these wars.
Yeah.
They could not see beyond the dangers that they would be walking into if the monarch or the reigning authority did pick and choose a side.
Yes.
That was the problem that Kamehameha faced. That's how they ended up a colony. That's what, because the Kauai, the Kaumuali'i and the chiefs of Kauai and elsewhere, they had higher ranking blood, and they went and got the Russian support, right? Everybody started grabbing support. You know, Kamehameha goes and gets the English, Kaumuali'i and the Kauai guys go get the Russians, and everybody's trying. Same thing happened in Samoa. Those guys go get German support. Those guys go get British support. And what happened?
Those guys get American support.
If you look around and you don't see the idiot in the room, you're the idiot in the room, right? And who got served for dinner? Those island nations got served for dinner because they didn't understand the game that was being played.
No, 100%. And that's a perfect segue to what I consider one of the greatest things that I appreciate in doing the podcast is I think Tongans overall in general do not appreciate what Laufiri Tonga offers as the final gift of the Tui Tonga to the Tongan people. And it is that extreme understanding of the long play, right? The long play and understanding, because I can almost guarantee with being the Catholic and the Catholic influences of like, well, yeah, Tupou the First has England, you know, but we have France and we have Portugal and we have Spain. Laufiri Tonga could have easily fallen to that. But as the story that you shared, Maui displays, the long history and understanding and dynamics of power, that was something that Laufiri Tonga was able to look past.
He understood the assignment. He understood the assignment.
And he looks at it and he says, this is something that's important. And give the context, because in some of the comments that we put online, we use, this is where the gifting concept comes from, right? He was all like, how was it gifted? If you know, Tupou the First beat him in Velata and took over the settlement stuff, and he took over. We're talking about the gifting that happens later, where Laufiri Tonga sends one of his Wharewa to set up the Taumawhakava for the Tu'ikanuku and Tupou the First, and how kind of give the context and history and any kind of, you know, good nuggets you think it'd be important for the viewers and the listeners to understand behind that, because I think we need to have a lot of appreciation for that. No, that's fine. Okay, Basi, I think the longest we've had is 4 hours. So this would not be unheard of. Now, I mean, if you don't want to, I can give the summary of that perspective, if that's something that you think or is too
No, but I
long,
think
or
I've seen you do it in other podcasts, and it's almost like a repeat. But I think we've answered the questions in the video.
well, that's why. And then I'm bringing it up here is Masi and I have learned, just like when you do sports, repetition is king. Repetition is king, right? And so, just like right here, just like native people, this is the first time seeing native people, and he says, yes, please. And like Masi says, give the people what they want, right? So, really, at the end of the day, the short version is this: Tupo the First did not have like the consuming power that everyone thinks he has just from unifying Tonga. In reality, all he did was restore the Tu'ikanukupolu to its original role and responsibility, which was to manage the day-to-day and so forth of that. And so Laufiri Tonga telling Tupo the First that the Tui Tonga title ends with him, giving him a Taumafakava, which he did not have, that really empowers Tupo the First and gives him a shot to unify and keep Tonga independent.
To maintain, well, because what happened was Laufili Tonga, probably only Laufili Tonga and Tupo the First. You could put Tungi Halatuituia in there too. Between the three of them, they probably knew that the only way, because once Tonga was unified under Tupo the First and everything, it was, they knew the real enemy was from outside. It was the Europeans, and they realized, and Laufili Tonga realized, that the fact that there were three line of kings, each of them understood how the foreign powers were trying to play each other against them, not understanding how the three lines of kings in Tonga was a division of responsibilities and they worked together. But the three line of kings in Tonga is a foreign concept and they didn't understand. I've even read multiple communications between the London Mission Society and also the Wesleyan Church, where the London Mission Society decided to give up rights to the Tongan Islands to the Wesleyans, and then the Wesleyans thanked them and said that we're going to send missionaries. Then they also sent another communication saying, what advice can you give us before we send our missionaries there? And then the London Mission Society responded by saying, Tonga has a unique system. They have three lines of kings, and the line of kings that we thought was the paramount was the Tu'ikanukupolu, but it appears that we may have misunderstood how their system is set up, that the proper right of kings that you need to get permission for the whole country is in Mu'a. And so that's why the Wesleyans in 1822 went to Mu'a instead of back to Hihifo. And so the fact that there were three line of kings, they didn't understand how the roles of each and how they played. And so when the European powers came into Tonga, they tried to pick a king, one of the kings, and they tried to pit them against each other, but they couldn't because they understood that they all worked together. And so I think it got to a point where Laufili Tonga realized, if we don't have one king, there might be someone who comes after one of our heirs or something, and you don't know about these foreigners might be successful in ripping Tonga apart. So it was just at the proper time to bring all the kingship together under one, and it happened to fall on the lot of Taufa Ahau.
Not
And
100%.
I think Taufa Ahau, if he was younger than Laufili Tonga, and Taufa Ahau was the older, I believe Taufa Ahau would have succeeded the Tu'ikanukupolu title to the Tui Tonga. It just happened to be they just played their assignment. They knew their assignment and they played their role and their duty to country to the T.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Tonga
and
is
is blessed for it.
benefiting. Yeah.
Real quick, David Toefoki, who is already a paying member of the channel, gave a $50 super chat. Malo Pito, and he
Malo,
says,
Evita.
Malo Maukava, Tevita, and he says, Malo Fangatakawa, Maukoloa, Teukiafeau, see you on the next one. Malo Pito,
Malo
Tevita,
ti.
appreciate it. And the other thing that I thought that was interesting, and it could be another thing to consider as well, is because the Tu'itonga was so elevated, it was unbecoming for the Tu'itonga because it appears this consolidation of power, right? It seemed very unbecoming for the Tu'itonga to try and come down and to use the principle that you shared earlier, Maui, is how you elevated someone to get them to the Tu'ihatakalawa was to bring them up through the Tu'ikanukupolu and then bring them into the Tu'ihatakalawa. This seemed like there could be the possibility, there was an understanding of we can elevate Taufa'ahau at some point to that level. And what I find funny, and before we go for closing thoughts here, and no, actually, we'll go to another paying member that has a question that just showed up here. I want to recognize them as much as we can. Well, it must not have been that important because I forgot about it. Oh, no, it was this. We talked about this on one of our previous episodes, Masi, where we watched Tupo the Sixth rededicate Tonga and some of the words that he used. And I can't help but observe that the Tupo line, believe it or not, the same structure from Tu'itonga, the Tu'ihatakalawa, and the Tu'ikanukupolu in the government structure of today. The Tupo family is now taking much more a priestly role and soft power role, and their focus is on rededicating the country to God, having more of a religious moral compass for the nation, and then the prime minister taking much more of a secular
political
role and political, which is kind of interesting, kind of dynamic. So as far as we get away from the past, it seems like we're repeating it. Once again, Fisiuhi Q, appreciate being a paying member. And his question is, how did the royal bloodline go from dark skin to light skin if they can't marry outsiders? Any thoughts on that?
There's there's many light-skinned Tongans. They're not all dark.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think even Mariner and even George Vason, who's an earlier account, he even mentions how there were groups of Tongans that were not even like like dark or just normal brown, but they were fair. So
yeah,
I mean, just to add to that point, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, down now for closing remarks. We hit the 3-hour mark. I had a feeling it was going to be because there were 3 videos in there, and once I saw that first one was 10 minutes, I didn't realize that one was 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But we didn't break our record yet. I think our record with Mr. Aotearoa was a 4-hour session. So we're still within our bandwidth here. This will eventually probably be 3 episodes released on the podcast. But let's go Casual Observer, Maui, and then Mr. Aotearoa to close us out. Any closing thoughts?
I think maybe the older you get, hopefully the wiser you get. But it's interesting to see that these lessons of leadership, if you can learn and understand them correctly, they're very applicable in your immediate life, within your own families. It's very unfortunate to see sometimes how heartbroken some parents, some grandparents become when they see, somebody passes away or something happens, and then to watch their children or their grandchildren fight. I think when you are raised in a kingly line or in a priestly line, and you are trained and taught to your whole life to look at everybody in the country as your children or your grandchildren, and that you have this role to fulfill to all of them. I think if you look at all of that through those lenses, you can understand the decisions that they're making a lot better and a lot more clearly, and you can then apply that to yourself. Like when your grandkids get into a fight and then one grandkid says, "Come join my side so we can beat up the other grandkid," that's heartbreaking for a grandparent or a parent. And I think for a lot of people these days who look through a different lens at the decisions and actions of ancestors and what they made, we don't appreciate or understand. We don't put ourselves in the shoes that they walked in, so that we can more clearly see what it is, the challenges that they had to deal with. And what you are asking for, like, dude, can you imagine like somebody coming to you and asking to go into the town where your mother is from and asking to wipe them all out? That's it. Like, if you think of it that way, then you kind of understand, like, shoot, I can't do that. That's just not something I'm going to do. But people don't take the extra step to better understand why someone would say something and why they don't mind if other people misinterpret what they said. Because ultimately what they're not going to do is I'm not going to wipe out my mom's family. So yeah, and then it's a kind of more recent, the chief of war situation. I think they have just completely lost the understanding of what kava was, what it represented, and how it maintained order in a society. Hawaii went through some very, very difficult times there, and it's kind of sad to see how. But they, Tonga again was a little more fortunate, because the Tongan population didn't get devastated by disease the way other islands were, but. Yeah, it's leadership. Leadership is a very difficult thing to acquire, and when you do, you should do everything you can to hold on to it for your family. And so that's what I would like to see from this particular kava session, is lessons that can be learned for immediate application within our own lives today.
Malo, Maui.
Oh, it's longest podcast I've ever been on, 3 hours.
My idea.
Yeah. I appreciate participation and people putting out thoughts on the internet. It creates good discussion. And a lot of times I'm not one to shut down participation. I like the conversation. It doesn't have to be the goal. It shouldn't be if it's 100% correct or 100% wrong. Just having the conversation is a great way to not only gain understanding but appreciation for others. It's but at the end of the day, the more we talk about it, the more nuggets that will come out, and we'll more and more come to the realization of how all the Polynesian eyes are related. So that's why I love the podcast and what you guys do.
Malo.
Yeah, malo.
Mr. Aotearoa.
No, I was just thinking, like, I was just thinking of like what Lee was saying, casual observer was saying with the wiping out family. But I was like thinking, I think, if your mother's family does a treason act, right? You first want to have a talanoa. I'm just saying, you want to have a talanoa, because I'm thinking of Taufahau. I'm thinking of like Taufahau when he did a lot of cleansing of the civil wars in all of Hihifo and Bailoto and stuff, right? I'm sure he was related to all of them, but because they did a treason act, he had to. sometimes you don't want to do it. I'm sure you don't want to do it, but when you do something that's a treason, you gotta do what you gotta do because sometimes people don't learn even in the family. That's what I'm trying to say. But
I'm so glad you're so far away from being the oldest.
No, Lee. We learned this. We learned this o fumalo he konga haamoa Masi. Remember Masi when we were talking about the haka and booing it?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe we shouldn't boo. Masi's like, no.
I think it's my Samoan like this.
Boo it.
Yes.
Boo it.
No, Tua is right. You know, the Matema Tonga, it's fine. The Matema Tonga, they like to sing the other country's national anthem and stuff and be always kind and touchy a little bit. I'm more of the Ha'amoa. When there's the other one doing the haka and they're going to beat you and they're also, the modern day, they want to kill you. You boo them. And that's more my style of the Ha'amoa. The Ha'amoa fans boo New Zealand. You boo them. This is not a friendly, be all nice and stuff. That's just me. I think it's my Konga Ha'amoa strong on that one.
I'm gonna any mother around Masi.
No. I just wanted to touch on that because I was just thinking you're right because hopefully some of your families do something wrong. You want to have a talanoa, it can be sorted, but sometimes talanoa doesn't work and it can bleed out to some fire. Whoever has the biggest fire, I guess, wins.
So just grab the closest club.
No, but that's. I just wanted to share that's what I was thinking at that moment.
This is like one of those underhanded things that probably some jerk Matapure did. Just to remind the treasonous how you nasty little sneaky pieces of crap. Turn the pig over. Go lift up the head to see if there's any weapons underneath the head. Just so everybody knows there's no weapon, but just do it anyway. Remind those guys. So it's a reminder. Every time you see the pig upside down and we go lift the head, it's because you guys were treacherous little snots. That's that. I guarantee you, that's what they did. That's why.
I think that was part of it too. That was part of it too to make them remember we haven't forgotten.
Yeah. You sneaky little
but it's awesome.
Mr. Casual Observer or some of our viewers are saying, "Bros, Mike." They say, "Guys, this is not a professional. You can see
unplanned.
There's a bed behind us. So just give us a
No. If our listeners are complaining about the mics and stuff, maybe we should create a wish list and put it out. And if they're willing to give us professional mics, take it.
I like that.
That's Tuitonga thinking right there.
That's Tuitonga thinking. That's Tuitonga thinking there.
My AirPods went through the laundry and I think they screwed up the mic.
Yeah, the water. Go ahead, Masi. Go ahead. Closing thoughts. Thoughts.
No. I really, really enjoyed this. I know it was a very long podcast, but like I said, not all the time we have Casual Observer and Maui Tekelangi at both on at the same time. So it is a precious moment just to have everyone on and just have a conversation and a talanoa. That's what the Polynesianized podcast and this live digital cover session is about, and to uncover more of our history, to piece it together, to understand the past. Because like I said before, why do you want to understand the past? The past helps you to know your identity, what your ancestors have done to get you to this point, and prepare you for the future to make better choices and have a more impactful life that you can leave behind. But that's what I've learned in this segment. I hope our friend Story of Who, they always say something, he was a Tamamoshi, and then hopefully after this podcast, he became a Tamamatu, which is a much more mature understanding of the knowledge that we've dropped today. And but yeah, ofatu to everybody. Tua, thank you for organizing this like always. And also thank you to all the viewers who contributed. Not only that they paid money to subscribe, but they also add additional money to their questions, like David Toifoki. Appreciate it. And all the viewers, because I've noticed we're defending less Tua, and our soldiers are defending our ideas when people comment, and that is awesome because the word is spreading to understanding our Polynesian history, and they're having the knowledge to understand why certain events that happen. So that's me. Ofatu, everybody. Malo.
Yeah,
Malo
malo,
Mazim.
malo. Hey, look, we got $4.99 to the new mic donation. Malo
Malo,
chili fly.
malo.
See, malo. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Closing comments. Number one, story of who? I repent of my ways. If you ever want to join us, always open to join
Yes,
us.
sir. Yes,
You
sir.
know, all the things we say here, entertainment
So you
value.
closed the door. Now you're opening
So,
it after we got
yo.
a history knowledge of.
Yes.
Hey.
That you know, the kava has softened my heart and it's making me a little wiser. And so, really want to say, hey, story of who? If you ever change your mind, come and join us. You know, it's just like the thing. It's brotherly, you know, competition. We're just having some fun and really appreciate our viewers and our listeners. Like I said, we're marching towards 2,000. It feels like every week we get one or two additional paying members. We're gonna hit millions of views again in 2026.
Just on YouTube, 900. Oh, we're approaching 900,000. So that's crazy. Just on YouTube alone.
Yes. And really, what we really, and Mr. Atearoa brought this out. This is why I really love our viewers. They tag us, they send us content, they send us people to bring on here. This is one of the reasons why we don't have a shortage of content. We have the opposite problem, which is a good problem to have. And we're marching towards 2,000 subs on YouTube. So once again, really appreciate everyone. And as always, we say, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Be bold and always stay curious. Till next time. Peace.
Peace.
Later.